5 stars. Are you kidding me? 5 stars. I'm already regretting it. Are you kidding me? Oh my god, no! This might be like my favorite book that I've read so far this year. Hey friends, how's it going? My name is Gabby. Welcome back to my channel. And today I'm going to be working on a very special and exciting video project. Because to celebrate my 10-year anniversary on BookTube, I asked 10 of my BookTube friends to control my TBR this month. And I'll be celebrating my 10-year BookTube anniversary this month because I uploaded my very first video to YouTube in late February 2015. And I cannot believe the fact that it's been 10 years. That is so wild. So I really wanted to do something special for my 10-year anniversary. So I decided to ask 10 of my booktuber friends to either give me a book recommendation or to give me a reading prompt. In this video, I'll be reading 10 different books across so many different genres. You will actually not believe one of the books that got recommended to me. So these are the 10 friends that I decided to ask for recommendations. We have my friends Ashley, Allie, Jan, Gavin, Aaron, Marcy, Kayla, Meg, Lexi, and Elizabeth. And I wanted to ask some friends who do have, very similar reading taste to me and read similar genres like I do, but I also wanted to mix it up and have some friends in here who read very differently than I do, so that I would have a wide variety of different genres and things happening in this video. And some friends definitely pushed me outside of my comfort zone just a little bit. I do expect this video to be pretty long, so I will include some timestamps down below, but I will be showing my reaction to each one of the videos that my friends sent. I also do make it fun and I try to predict which books I think my friends might recommend me, which sometimes I did get them right, but most of the time I was wrong. It's a really fun vlog and it's something that I'm very proud of. Like, this is definitely the most ambitious project I've taken on my channel so far. I don't think I've ever tried to make a video where I have to read 10 books for one video, so like, let's hope for the best. So let's jump right into the vlog, kicking things off with my friend Marcy. Okay, hello. I just got the video from my friend Marcy, and Marcy is somebody that I feel like I don't think that I could predict what she's gonna recommend to me. Not only because Marcy reads so many horror books, and she reads so many horror books that I've like never even heard of before, so there's a chance that she could recommend me some kind of horror book that I've never freaking heard of. I feel like there's also a chance that Marcy could recommend me a Stephen King book that I haven't read, and I know that Marcy lately has kind of been in her like cozy mystery era, so maybe there's a chance she could recommend me something like that. So let's find out and see together what she's gonna recommend.
Hi Gabby, first off, happy 10 years on YouTube. What a feat. I am so proud of you. I hope that you are proud of yourself for the commitment that you have given yourself to be here on YouTube and just grace us with your beautiful personality. For my book recommendation, I was kind of nervous. I was gonna give 2. I was gonna cheat a little bit and give you 2, but I think I'm gonna keep it to the just one and sort of force you to read it, because I was gonna give you an out just because not everybody likes cozy mysteries. My rec for you is Buried in a Good Book by Tamara Berry. I love this little book so much, and I wish that you enjoy it and that you love it just the same. And if nothing else, I hope that you have so much fun reading this. This is set in Winthrop, Washington, which every time I say that or every time I think about this book, I think about you because I know you live in Washington. So I hope that makes it extra special for you. I hope you enjoy the characters as much as I did. Again, Gabby, happy 10-year anniversary. I am so happy I met you through this platform. Keep being you, keep being sweet, keep being a radiant personality that you are. And I hope you enjoy. I hope you enjoy. I love you. Mwah. Bye.
Oh, I love you so much, Marcy. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I was a little bit spot on with thinking that she was going to recommend me a cozy mystery. And that one, I think that's one that we've actually talked about before. And that one also takes place in Washington State. So like, that's another cool thing because, I live in Washington State. So that's cool. Oh, I'm excited to read this one. Thank you so much, Marcy. Hello. I wanted to check in because I have started reading Buried in a Good Book, and I'm actually like nearly 200 pages in at this point. I'm about 60% of the way through the story. So I thought now would be a good time to update you. And this one is a cozy mystery, as we know. It takes place in the state of Washington, which is really cool. But in this story, something that I'm really liking about it is that we're following this character who is a writer. She's actually a thriller writer herself, and she has recently gone through a divorce, and so she's trying to reconnect with her 14-year-old daughter. So our main protagonist, she recently inherited this rustic cabin from her grandfather, and shortly after they arrive there, there's an explosion, and they think that they see like human body parts in this explosion, and they're like, what the heck is going on? So then it's kind of a story about like her trying to figure out like what's going on in the town. I mean, kind of like any cozy mystery novel, it definitely has the cozy atmosphere. I really do like the atmosphere in this story. It's giving very much like cabin in the woods, like small town vibes. Like most cozy mysteries, you're getting introduced to a lot of characters in the town, including like the deputy and the sheriff. And this main protagonist is kind of like helping the police with like trying to solve what's going on. And I think she's an interesting point of view to follow because since she is a thriller writer, writer. You know, like she has the kind of brain that's like trying to solve mysteries all the time. So it is interesting to get her perspective on this particular crime. There was a lot of talk about like Bigfoot at the beginning, which I thought was so fun because somebody was wearing a Bigfoot costume and there was a lot of speculation like, oh my god, is there Bigfoot in the area, or like is it just somebody that dressed up as Bigfoot? Like they don't know. So I do think that Tess is a very fun character to follow in this story, and I do love her relationship with her teenage daughter and kind of how that's getting explored. You know, I do love stories that have like strong mother-daughter relationships, and I think that theirs is interesting because it's kind of complicated. And you know, her daughter Gertie is going through like those really rough, you know, like teenage years. I think right now at nearly 200 pages in, the story's starting to like lose my interest just a little bit, or I guess I'm just kind of getting bored with the story. But I also have to remind myself that like I know that I just don't typically like cozy mysteries. Like they're just not usually my kind of genre. I just prefer like my mysteries to have a little bit more of like higher stakes. But I do think that if you're somebody that enjoys cozy mysteries, like I do think this is one of the better ones out of all of the ones that I've tried to read, because the vibes in this book are great. Like the atmosphere is so good. If you're looking for those cozy vibes, like this one definitely has it. I also think, you know, this one is really like easy to listen to on audio. Like I've just been listening to this one all morning while I've been like driving around and doing a bunch of errands today, and it is such an easy one to like listen to and to get invested and to be able to follow the story very easily just listening to it on audio. So I would recommend listening to this one on audio. Also, isn't this so adorable? I got this copy from my library and it's kind of like small. It's like mass market paperback size, and I just adore the size of this. Like I think it's so freaking adorable. So yeah, anyway, that is my update at this point. I will check in later tonight when I hopefully will be able to finish this by tonight. Hi, it is many hours later, but I wanted to update you because I just finished reading Buried in a Good Book, and this story was really cute. I can definitely see why Marcy would recommend this one to me. I think for me personally, it's probably gonna end up being around a 3-star, but I think that mostly has to do with the fact that I'm just not really a big cozy mystery fan. I don't know why, I just tend to get really bored with cozy mystery, but I do think that if you are the kind of person who does like cozy mysteries, I do think there is so much about this that you would love. I mean, I loved, you know, that this took place in Washington. That definitely did add a lot to the story for me because they were talking about some places in Washington that I'm familiar with. Like Seattle was mentioned quite a few times, and the town of Winthrop is somewhere that I've always wanted to go, so it was really cool to actually get to read about it. There's also, oh my god, I forgot to mention in the last update, but there's a character that has a bookmobile in this story, and I just think that that's so cool, and it just adds to the overall like cozy vibes of this. I also did like following a writer, and especially like a thriller writer in this book, because I love how when things would happen in the plot, she'd be like, oh, I should think to use that in my next book, or like, oh, that's a cool plot twist that I could add to my next story. And I just think it's always really fun to follow like any kind of writer characters like that in general. I think this book does have really great characters and it has really great atmosphere and setting. I just think the mystery of this book, I guess I just wasn't that invested in the mystery, and parts of this felt a little bit like cheesy, especially towards the end. Like I thought the last like third of this book felt really cheesy, but I feel like that's kind of the point, you know, with these cozy mysteries, and I think that's why I know that it's like not my particular favorite kind of genre. But I do think for me it's a 3-star. I think it was a solid recommendation. So thank you so much to my friend Marcy for recommending me this one. And now it's on to the next. So my friend Ashley just sent me her video recommendation, and I'm so excited to see what Ashley recommends. If I had to guess the genre of what kind of book she's gonna recommend me, I feel like it's either gonna be a thriller book or maybe a romance book. I know that Ashley's a really big fan of those thrillers that are called like the Alperton Angels or something like that, and it's by that author Janice something. So it wouldn't surprise me if she recommended me something by this author. I know that Ashley was a pretty big fan of that mystery book that came out last year that was called Every Time I Go on Vacation Somebody Dies or something like that. So maybe she could recommend me that one. I don't know yet. Let's watch it.
Hi Gabby. First off, congrats on 10 years on BookTube.
Thank you.
That's amazing. And thanks for asking me to be a part of this video. I'm very excited to recommend a book for you. I think you're really gonna like it. It was one of my favorite books of last year,
okay,
and I feel like it fits a lot of the things that you like as well.
Okay.
I also haven't seen anyone else read this book, so I'd love to see more people read it and hopefully enjoy it as well. But if you don't like it, that's okay.
Oh my God.
I think you're gonna like it though. The book is called A Quantum Love Story by Mike Chen.
Oh.
This is a time loop sci-fi romance.
Ooh.
Your main character is a neuroscientist named Mariana who has just been going through a difficult time lately. She's kind of unsure about where she is in her career. But then one day she is at this facility where they have this particle accelerator machine. And this random man named Carter approaches her, and he knows all these things about her, and he's trying to frantically talk to her because he tells her they are about to enter a time loop. And then the facility explodes and the time loop begins. They are stuck in the same 4-day cycle over and over again, with the facility exploding at the end of it every time, and they work together to try to figure out how to break out of the time loop. They face some challenges along the way, they develop some romance along the way, and it's just a really great time, and I think you're gonna enjoy it.
Oh my god, Ashley. Okay, thank you. I think I might have heard about this book before because I think I did hear Ashley talk about this book last year, but she's right. Like, I haven't really heard anybody else talking about this book, but I'm so excited. You have no idea, because Ashley has got her finger on the pulse, okay? Because I've literally been saying that, like, I think 2025 is going to be my year where I try to get into more sci-fi, and especially sci-fi romance. Like, the fact that this is a sci-fi book that also includes romance, like, this sounds like something that I'm actually in the mood for right now. So that is so perfect. Thank you so much, Ashley. I can't wait to read this one. Hello, I wanted to check in with you because I have started reading A Quantum Love Story. I was able to get this book from my library. I'm about 120 pages in, which puts me at about 33% of the way through this one on audio. I was also able to get the audiobook from my library. And so far, this story has been very interesting. Basically, we're following these two characters named Carter and Mariana, and both of them work in science. And it's interesting because the very first chapter of this book is told from Carter's perspective, and it's about how he's like meeting this girl again, and he's like, oh my god, like she doesn't even know that like we've had this conversation before and that we're like stuck in this time loop together, which was really interesting. But then so far the rest of the book has all been told from her perspective, and so it's almost like we kind of get a little bit of a glimpse into like what's actually going on because we're reading from Carter's point of view, and he's kind of like talking about the time loop and talking about what's happening. And then following that, we get Mariana's perspective as she's like starting to figure it out, but she's like, oh my god, like what do you mean that we've had this conversation before? And it's cool because you got to see the conversation that they had previously in that first chapter. And so basically, I don't really fully understand what's going on here, but they're stuck in this time loop that lasts for 4 days. And every time at the end of this 4 days, there's like this huge explosion that like kills everybody and wipes everybody out. And then it just starts over the time loop again, and they wake up again on Monday morning. And so they're trying to figure out like why this is happening and like why they seem to be like the only two people that are involved in this time loop, because nobody else seems to be experiencing the same time loop. Nothing really romantic has happened yet. I mean, the characters are definitely like, you know, getting to know each other, and I see the potential for a romance because it'll be like, I just noticed that his eyes are this most beautiful shade of brown, like right before the explosion happens. So like there's definitely some hints at like a romance that could be happening in this. I think so far for me, this is reading like okay. Like I'm invested in trying to figure out like what's going on and like why these two are stuck in this time loop, but I'm also like, I'm not feeling super connected to their characters yet, and I don't know why that is. I mean, something that I do like about, you know, Mariana's character is that she's dealing with the recent death of like her best friend. Like her best friend has just died 3 months ago, and her best friend was actually like her stepsister, and it was this woman named Shay, and she also worked in science, and they like did everything together. So I do feel like her having this connection with this woman Shay, it does add a lot of depth to her character, which I am really liking. At about 120 pages in, I'm not feeling super connected to these characters yet, at least like not on an emotional level, but I am really liking the writing in this book. Like I'm finding the writing to be very readable, you know, very like easy to get into, and I am invested in the mystery of like trying to figure out what exactly is going on with this time loop and like why it's even happening. So like we'll have to see where the rest of this goes. I'm actually currently doing some reading sprints right now on my Patreon, so I'm hoping that I can finish up the rest of this book this afternoon. Finished reading A Quantum Love Story. Last night I got to the point where I only had like 10% left of the audiobook, and I was just too tired to finish it last night. I don't know why. Last night was also really great, by the way, because me and my sister were currently watching the originals still, and we're on season 4 right now. And like, dude, I am so obsessed with this show. Like, I cannot believe it. Like, season 3 of the originals was like one of the best things that I've ever seen on TV. It was just so entertaining, and like the originals has just completely taken over my life and like all of my thoughts. But anyway, A Quantum Love Story, I think I'm probably gonna give this somewhere between like 3 or maybe 3.5 stars. I mean, don't get me wrong, there were so many things about this book that I really did enjoy. I love stories like this that involve some kind of time loop. I think this one was especially unique, you know, because the time loop lasted for 4 days, as opposed to like most time loops. I feel like a lot of times time loops would be like 1 day or like maybe a little bit longer, but I like the fact that it was 4 days. It was just so unique in that way. I also did really enjoy like Carter's character in this book, and I love that he was such a foodie, you know, because I forgot to mention how like every time the time loop resets, it resets like everything, even including like your bank account. And so after he discovered this, he was like, I'm gonna like try some expensive food and get some like expensive wine and like try things that I usually wouldn't try because it's way too expensive. And I was like, oh my god, you know that like that's what I would be doing. Like if I was stuck in a time loop and I realized like, oh, my money's just gonna reset at the end of this, I would also do the same. Like I would try some expensive foods and like do some things that I normally wouldn't. So I thought that that was also funny and like a really unique aspect of the story. But I do think, oh my gosh, somewhere around the middle of this, the story like really started to drag for me. Like I don't think this book needed to be as long as it was, because I do think, you know, this book reads a lot more sci-fi than romance. I think there's a lot of times where they're doing like these scientific theories and like a hypothesis, and they're testing out their theories over and over and over again to try to get out of this time loop. And so some of the sci-fi elements of this definitely went a little bit over my head, but I do like how it read a little bit more sci-fi than romance, because I don't know, for the romance in this, I just wasn't that invested in the romance in this book. I don't know why. It just didn't feel that fleshed out, or like I couldn't connect with the romance in the way that I was hoping to. But it wasn't until a little bit later on in the book that I started to like see the bigger picture of like what this author was trying to do with the story, and I thought it was really cool and like really well done. I liked the added element of how like every time the time loop was resetting, Carter was like losing some of his memories, which is mentioned in the premise of the book, by the way, which I didn't realize. But I liked that about the story because it kind of created this like urgency with like trying to figure out what the heck is going on, because he was slowly like starting to lose some of his memories every time the time loop would reset. I don't think it's gonna be like one of the most memorable books that I've ever read, but I do love reading time loop stuff like this. Like I have a lot of fun with sci-fi books like this. So thank you so much to Ashley for recommending me something like this, because Mike Chen is an author that I've been curious about for a long time. And Mike Chen actually does have a few other books that I'm so interested in checking out. So I'm glad that I finally gave this author a shot, because I do really like this author's writing style. Let's get on to the next book. All right, so my friend Gavin has just sent me his video, and I am so excited and so nervous to see what Gavin recommends me, because I feel like me and Gavin, we read very different books usually. He reads a lot more fantasy than I do. And just in general, we do tend to have some different reading taste, so I am very curious to see what he will recommend me. And I also feel like Gavin might recommend me something terrible as a joke. I know he's always talking about that book that's like The Perfect Poo or something like that. Like he might make me read that as a joke, and I will absolutely veto. I will like send this video back to him and be like, give me a real recommendation. But if Gavin was giving me a real recommendation, I know some stuff that he's enjoyed recently that I think that I could enjoy as well would be like Dungeon Crawler Carl. I think Gavin just read this recently in a vlog, and like that one sounds kind of intriguing. Like I'd be down to read that. He also recently read Before the Coffee Gets Cold, and he really liked that one, and that one's been on my TBR for like literally forever. Anyway, let's watch the clip.
Gabby, happy 10 years. I can't believe how old you are now on BookTube.
I know.
You're getting grey hairs just like me. Now we are twinning
Twins.
even harder. But anyway, Gabby, you asked me for a prompt. You asked me for a recommendation. You asked me to give you guidance in these trying times. And I'm here to be your guiding light, your beacon of hope, by giving you a prompt that will, I don't think it'll take you that much out of your comfort zone. But however, the prompt is to read from an author who scares you. And this could mean so many different things. And I'm just trying to, you know, just like push you, because I'm a pusher, Gabby. I push people. But you can interpret this many different ways, so that this is kind of a free kind of prompt for you. I'm nice like that. But for instance, you could read an author who kind of scares you, maybe because of the fandom. Maybe someone like Stephen King, who I know you've enjoyed from in the past. But those fans can be intense, but don't worry, I'll protect you. However, if you don't want to do it with Stephen King, maybe it can be an author who has a back catalogue that you're kind of scared to try because you're going to be embarrassed if you end up liking it. Like The Perfect Poo by M.G. Edwards.
Oh my god,
Feel
I knew
embarrassed
this.
all you want.
I
Feel
knew this was
shame
coming.
all you want. But don't turn around and lie to me and tell me
Veto.
you won't enjoy this. And it doesn't even have to be The Perfect Poo. It can be something totally different that fits this kind of category.
This man.
Read from an author you're scared to read because you might be embarrassed that you might actually enjoy it. Or embarrassed that you might not like it. So it could even be an author that people have loved, but you're kind of scared to read from because you're afraid that your opinion might be different to the majority of people who have read from that author before. So keep that in mind. Could be an author who writes in a genre that you don't typically read. So hey, remember that time I made you read Someone You Can Build a Nest In by John Wiswell and you enjoyed it?
I do.
Fantasy. Maybe you could read a fantasy author. You could be scared to pick a fantasy author because fantasy isn't really the genre that you go to. So that itself could lead you down a massive path of different authors you could try. Ash, do you have a prompt for Gabby? Do you have a prompt for Gabby? What's the prompt?
Oh,
What's the prompt?
Ash.
Oh, or maybe you could read from an author who you have read from before and didn't like what you read, but maybe there's something else that author has written that has piqued your interest, maybe because of the plot, maybe because it's had good reviews from friends that you know and love, like me. Honestly, I feel like the world is your oyster with this prompt, so hopefully it's a good one. If not tough shit, you're going to have to live with it. And I wish you the best time ever. Happy 10-year anniversary to you. Mwah.
Thank you, Gavin. Thank you. Wow. Okay, I'm definitely gonna have to think on this one. I really do love the idea of this kind of prompt, like of reading from an author that kind of intimidates me or that scares me a little bit. Because I definitely think, you know, Stephen King is an author that definitely scares me and intimidates me a little bit. Mostly, yeah, because of his fandom. Like, he's absolutely right. We've talked about this before. Stephen King fans can be a little bit intense with their opinions. But oh my god, I'm not too sure what I want to read yet. I mean, I could read The Dead Zone by Stephen King because that is a book that I know that Gavin has really enjoyed, and he's actually like influenced me to want to pick up that book. So maybe I could read The Dead Zone. Maybe I could look into seeing if there's any like fantasy authors that kind of intimidate me that maybe I can try something from them. I don't know. I'm gonna give this one a think and then I'll come back at you once I figure it out. Okay, hi. I wanted to check in with you about Gavin's prompt because I have made some decisions and I'm currently reading something. And I know that this choice might sound like something that just came out of left field, but I decided to start reading That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon for Gavin's prompt because, you know, this book is described as like a fantasy romance. And for me, you know, like that's definitely outside of like what I typically read. Like I am not really a romantasy reader, but I thought that this one could be a fun one to try, especially because this book is available on Kindle Unlimited. I actually don't even know if this is one that Gavin has read himself. I don't think he has, but I've seen a lot of my friends on BookTube reading this one and just saying that it's like a really fun book because while this book does intimidate me and like this author just intimidates me because I think there are a lot of people who really enjoy this book and who really enjoy, you know, like romantasy in general. And so I knew that maybe I should go about this by like trying to read something that's like romantasy or trying to read something that's like slightly out of my comfort zone. But I also wanted it to be a book that was like slightly on the shorter side just in case it wasn't really my thing. And so far with this book, I'm 50% of the way through right now. I'm about 139 pages in, and so far I'm actually enjoying this. Like I'm finding this book to be very fun. So in this story, we're literally following this woman who like accidentally gets drunk and saves a demon. Like that was not her intention to save him, but she saved him. And it's really funny because they have really great like banter right at the start of this book. I don't know, like there's something about the way that her character is written, like she is just cracking me up. Like I've already underlined so many lines that she says to him. I also love that her family has like a cinnamon spice farm. I don't know how to describe this book because there is something kind of cozy about the writing, but it also like doesn't feel that cozy because there are some like really gruesome and like graphic and gory descriptive scenes of like, you know, like limbs, you know, just like getting chopped off and like things happening. So like it is kind of gory and bloody, and like there is a pretty significant plot and like these characters are getting put in dangerous situations. So like I don't know if that would classify this as something more cozy, but some of her one-liners that have been cracking me up is when she says, "Who needs him?" or "Any man. Love is for people with not enough wine in their hands." Or when she's like, "This is all because I dyed my hair pink, isn't it? The one time I decided to stand out and I get punished for it." Or when it's like, "You don't need these foolish human items," he said, like the uncultured swine that he was. I don't know, there's just so many like moments that have actually kind of made me like laugh out loud. And I was able to get this audiobook checked out from my library, so I am listening to this on audio as I'm reading along on my Kindle. And I would highly recommend the audiobook because there's something about the delivery with this narrator. Like, oh my god, the way she's reading the story, it's just genuinely so funny. I'm just having a great time with her character in the audiobook, and I think that's mainly due to the fact that the narrator is so good on this audiobook. I mean, it definitely does fall into some of those like kind of cheesy romance tropes where, you know, like he's just like a beautiful demon, but because he's a demon, you know, like he has this dark side. But also like I do like the fact that he's like very protective of her almost right away because she saved his life. It kind of reminds me of like how fun it was to read like Ice Planet Barbarians or something like that, which I have read. I think books like this are so much fun and they're just like pure entertainment, you know? It's like, it's such a good distraction from reality kind of book. I will admit that I do think some of the fantasy elements of this book are going over my head just a little bit. I mean, the whole premise of this book is how he's gonna like use her help now to go and hunt down this witch. He just wants to like kill this evil witch that has brought harm to his people. And so he's dragging her along for the ride and they're going on this little adventure together and they run into danger along the way. There's definitely more plot in this book than I was expecting, which I do think is a good thing because like it's not relying too heavily on the romance, but there is a lot of smut in this book. Like already, like I'm only 130 pages in and there has been some like really steamy smut scenes and I'm like, oh, okay. I don't think that I've ever read smut, you know, with a demon. You know, here I am, look at me trying new things. So I am very surprised that this one's going pretty well so far. Like I could see myself giving this 4 stars, maybe 3 stars. It's going well. I'm having a fun time with it.
No, you ain't no psycho. You're not like the others, no. No changing behaviors. Not sure how to act around you. So colorful and bright, yeah. I wanna be a 9 to 5.
Okay, hello, I wanted to update you because I just got home from the gym, I washed my hair, and I finished reading That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon, and this was a really fun time. I think for me, it's probably gonna be around 3 stars. There were things that I really loved about this though that really surprised me that I wasn't expecting to enjoy, but not surprisingly, I think the fantasy aspects of this book were definitely like my least favorite, and I wasn't that invested in like the plot of this book, but I did think the romance was actually really surprising, and like the romance was really cute. I'm not always the biggest fan of nicknames when it comes to romance books, but I actually thought the nicknames in this romance book were pretty cute. I liked how he called her Rabbit. Like, I don't know, I thought it was kind of adorable. I also thought the demon character, like, I was kind of surprised by how much I enjoyed him for the most part. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, some of the smutty scenes, oh my god, like, they were a little over the top for me, and some of them kind of made me more uncomfortable than anything. Because, you know, I can be very particular about, like, the smutty scenes that I find enjoyable to read, and this one just, like, wasn't my favorite. Like, I don't know, I didn't love the way that some of these smut scenes were written. They were just kind of cringy for me. But like, I did like both of the characters, and I found a lot of enjoyment in this because I think the audiobook was so fun. I do recommend the audiobook, like if you do want to read this book, because I think the audiobook does a great job at conveying this main character's sense of humor. I just found her character to be really funny, and she really carried the story for me. And the way that this demon character would respond to her, I just thought they were kind of hilarious. Like, I don't know, I really enjoyed the relationship in this. I definitely think if you're the kind of person that enjoys fantasy romance, I think this could be totally right up your alley. And I'm glad that I got the chance to explore something more in fantasy romance, because I know this genre is so vast and like there's a lot of different things in fantasy romance. I've never read something that involves a demon before, so I'm glad that I got to like try something new. I don't know if I will continue in this series, to be honest. Like, I probably wouldn't, but I do think that I would read more from this author in the future, because I don't know if I'm like that invested in this particular world and like reading about demons and stuff like that, but I do think that this author has such potential to write like really fun romance, so I would definitely check out more from this author in the future. But for me, this one's around 3 stars. And thanks to Gavin for giving me such a fun prompt that kind of like allowed me to read something that I wanted to read and I was curious about, but I probably never would have actually picked this book up on my own. So thank you for giving me the push. On to the next. Allie just sent me her video already. Like, she is so freaking quick with it. I just sent her a message like 2 days ago. She is the first one to get back to me. And I'm very excited to see what Allie recommends, because I do think that me and Allie have a very similar taste. I mean, gosh, it was just like last night, I think, when I watched her best books of the year video for 2024, and we had so many favorites in common. Like, We Used to Live Here, she had The Push, Monstrilio. I don't know why, I'm kind of thinking that maybe there's a chance that Allie could recommend me something that was in her top favorite books of the year, because there are a few books on this list that I haven't read, including her #1 favorite, which is Beautyland, and her #2 favorite was this book called Open Throat. That sounds really intriguing. And then she also had the book Pink Slime, which is a book that I originally heard about from her, so I'm really curious to see what she's gonna recommend me. I'm really scared. I don't know, but let's see. Let's find out together.
Hey, happy 10 years on BookTube. That is so exciting and quite an accomplishment. I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank
and I'm so
you.
honored that you would include me in this. Thank you so much. As for my recommendation, I feel like
course.
I'm cheating because I already know you want to read this, but I'm going to recommend Walking
Oh
Practice
my
by Bill
God.
Min, translated by Victoria Caudill. This is a weird little book about an alien trapped on Earth, and they're non-binary. They like to eat humans, so they can shapeshift, and they catfish people. They play with them a little bit, and then it's also like very interesting, like physically. There's little drawings of the alien all throughout. It'd be really cool to color this in, by the way.
Very cool.
And then the translator did something really cool with the text. There's like a whole note in the back. I really recommend reading. So yeah, I have actually no idea what you're gonna think of this, but I hope you have fun, and happy 10 years on BookTube again. That's so exciting. Here's to 10 more.
Allie, yes, thank you. Okay, this is so exciting because that book, I don't think it was actually in her top favorites of the year, but I just watched a video of hers recently where she mentioned that book, and I think I commented something like, oh my gosh, I still really want to read Walking Practice. That is so exciting. Oh, what a perfect recommendation. Thank you so much, Allie. This is a book that's been on my radar because the premise for this literally says Squid Game meets The Left Hand of Darkness. Like, Squid Game, that's like one of my favorite things ever. So how have I not read this yet? I don't know. Hello, I wanted to check in with an update because I have started reading Walking walking practice. I did end up just going ahead and buying this book when I was in Vancouver because I had a really good feeling that I was gonna like really love this one, but I also did realize that this book is available on Kindle Unlimited for all the Kindle people out there. But anyways, I wanted to update you because I'm exactly at the halfway point of this book. I'm about 87 pages in, and this one is short, you know, it's a novella. It's only about like 160 pages, and so far I am really loving this. You know, this one is actually a translated book. It's from a Korean author, and this book does take place in South Korea. And in this story, we are following this character who is a shape-shifting alien, and while they are on Earth, they are eating humans, and like that's how they are surviving on Earth, is by eating humans. And this book is called Walking Practice because a lot of this book is talking about how like they're trying to learn how to walk in a human body. It's actually really cool, you know, because like my friend Ali was saying, there are a lot of drawings included throughout the book that kind of like show you what the alien form looks like, and it's actually so beautiful. So I really love all the drawings that have been included through this. I think it's so cool. Also, oh my gosh, I'm listening to this one on audio, which like the audiobook is so fantastic. Like, oh my gosh, this narrator, the way that the narrator is choosing to narrate the story, like, oh my god, I just love them. Like, they are so sassy. I think this author is doing a really great job at balancing some like really gruesome and graphic like body horror. Like, there's been a few scenes that I was like, oh my god, like disgusting, but like in a really good way. I don't know how to explain it. I'm just really loving the vibes of this so far. I also love like this author's already having some really great commentary on gender, because you know, this alien in this story, like it doesn't really have a gender that it associates with itself, because I love how the alien kind of addresses you as the reader directly, and it says, "You, dear reader, you must be curious about my gender. Perhaps you're even feeling a little anxious, or you might have scraped together clues from what I've said and how I've said it, constructing my gender to your own design. Regardless as to whether you are right or wrong, you will have come to your own conclusions." And I love how it says, "From a tender age, you have guessed the gender of countless humans whose bodies are covered by clothes, coming to conclusions based on the gender you believe corresponds to the shape of genitals you believe match up with the remaining exposed parts of their bodies. And you have lived your lives in certainty, believing the results of your deductions to be true." And so like I really like the commentary that's happening in this book about gender and like how that's kind of related to the horror as well. I do tend to love stories like this that are kind of like commentary about humanity from the perspective of, you know, an alien. Like that's like one of my favorite things to read. And so I am really enjoying the commentary about humanity, and this book is a little bit more sexual than you might expect, because this alien is kind of like utilizing a dating app to go and like meet these people that they eventually eat. And so there is a lot of sex in this book. There's a lot of like graphic nudity and like bodies mentioned. There's a lot of body horror, you know, but I'm really liking the body horror, and I am loving the narrator on this audiobook. Like this narrator is literally giving a performance, you know, like it's very entertaining. I'm just loving the writing style in this book because it's feeling very funny at times, but also like very gross and gory in the way that I expect horror to be. So I'm having a good time with this so far. I think I'm gonna spend the rest of the night just listening to the rest of this on audio because I don't have that much left. I'm already 50% of the way through it. This book is just absolutely flying. Stars. Are you kidding me? 5 stars. This book was wild and I loved this. I highly recommend the audiobook because like I was saying, not only is this a performance by this narrator and the audiobook is so cool and so well done, there's also some like really cool sound effects on the audiobook because literally some of the pages towards the end look like this and it's like, what the heck is going on? I also just think the writing in this book is very interesting because there will be a lot of pages like this where like some of the words get like kind of spaced out, and I was kind of like, oh, like I wonder why that is. And it was really cool because at the end of this book there is a note from the translator kind of talking about like why they made certain decisions to like make the text look that way, and the translator said it may look like a typesetting error, but the expansion and contraction of the English text is the strategy that I devised as a way to visualize in English the way the Korean text separates and clusters characters when the tension breaks. Oh my god, I thought that's so cool. Like, what a creative and unique way to translate the story. I also love, oh my god, the note from the translator at the end. It also said, the physicality of the text and the way it embodies and weaponizes conventional understandings of sex and gender as a way to feed the violent hunger of Mumu's loneliness is what makes Walking Practice a profoundly queer work of literature. And I just loved how at the end the translator's note kind of talks about the importance of having this kind of representation, especially in South Korea, because queerness in South Korea is not as broadly accepted as it is in other places. And this translator narrator even said at the end of this, translating this novel at a time when queer activists in Korea are fighting for an anti-discrimination bill, and when the rights of queer Americans are under sustained attack, reinforces my goal as a translator to make queer narratives visible and visceral. Oh my god, I just love that about this so much. And like some of the body horror in this book was so extreme in a way that I was like, oh my god, like it was just so visual. I loved that about this, and like I was saying earlier, like I feel like this book has such strong commentary on gender and like how much emphasis we put on gender. I love how when this character was talking about how to appear woman, or like this is how you have to act if you want to act like a woman. It was like, follow my advice, speak in a thin pretty voice, it has to be high pitched, try pushing it up into your nose, cover your mouth when you laugh, and all these things. And it's like, be unfailingly kind to others, especially men. I just love the way that it was described, and I just thought it was so entertaining but also like really accurate. Like there was so much truth in this text. I was also mostly listening to this one on audio, but like, oh my god, some of the visuals that are included in this book are just absolutely stunning. So I'm so happy that this ended up being 5 stars for me, like the first 5-star that we've had in this video. Let's go. Here's to hoping the next book goes just as well. Elizabeth just sent me her video. If I had to guess what Elizabeth is going to recommend me, nothing really comes to mind right away, and that's what makes me excited and nervous, but I have a feeling it's going to be something either like thriller or maybe in the horror genre. I'm not really sure what to expect with this, so I'm like really nervous and really excited, so let's see.
Hi Gabby, thank you so much for asking me to recommend you a book. I could not be more honored or more stressed, to be honest, because I really want to pick one that you're going to like, but no pressure. I want you to be honest as well when you read this. I'm going to give you 2 options because I can't choose between them. So I'm going to put a little bit of that pressure back on you.
Oh, shit.
Here are your choices. We have The First Day of Spring. This is by Nancy Tucker. This I thought of because it's similar to like a Lucinda Berry, The Perfect Child, but it's more psychological. I would say the tone of this is less thrillery and more along the same lines of Strange Sally Diamond. Then the second book that I want to recommend is The Body Lies by Jo Baker. I read this a couple of years ago, I think around the same time as Any Man by Amber Tamblyn, and I know you and I both really loved that one. This has a lot of commentary as well about women's bodies. How do we write about women without writing about the body? But it's not super twisty, don't go into it with that. It's just got something to say. The writing's beautiful. I think you'll connect with that.
My god, Elizabeth! Okay, well, I love that. I love that she gave me 2 different options because that's so interesting. Like, I love having the choice. I have tried to read The First Day of Spring. It's actually a book that I tried to read like a number of years ago now, and I think I DNF'd it after like the first 30-ish pages. So like I could try to reread this one, but because, you know, Elizabeth kind of talked about this book that I've never heard of, The Body Lies, and the way she kind of compared it to Any Man and like how it's about women's bodies, like that sounds like something that could be right up my alley, and I've never even heard of it. Oh, it came out in 2019. It's 288 pages. You know what? I'm intrigued. I think I'm gonna have to go with The Body Lies by Jo Baker. That sounds really interesting and like it could be right up my alley. So like, thank you so much, Elizabeth. I've never even heard of this book. Okay, hello. I wanted to check in because I have started reading The Body Lies. I was able to get this copy from my library, and then I also was able to check out the audiobook from my library as well. And I'm now about 75 pages in, and this is going very well so far. Okay, something that I didn't know that I think is so great is that this audiobook is actually narrated by Imogen Church, and she's like one of my favorite audiobook narrators because she's the one who does most of like Ruth Ware's audiobooks, and there's something so comforting about her voice. So like I'm already really connecting to this main character just because of that alone. Also, sorry for the mess back here, but I am doing laundry today and like washing all of my bed sheets and stuff, so it's kind of a mess. I think this book can be described as more of a like slow burn, kind of like literary fiction, almost like mystery thriller vibe. I mean, it's definitely setting up the vibes to be a mystery thriller, but it does feel like a bit of a slow burn right now. But I'm really liking it so far. In the very first chapter of this book, it's pretty intense because we read about this protagonist as she gets sexually assaulted when she's pregnant. So it's a little bit like, whoa, it's intense right off the start, but it's very brief. I mean, it only lasts for about a page or so. And then right after that happens, we flash forward 3 years later. Now in the story, she has this 3-year-old son named Sammy, and she accepts this job in the English countryside, and she's going to be working at this university as an English teacher. And basically like her job at this university is to teach students how to write a novel, which is so cool and so fun. You know, I love books that follow writers, and this one has so much great conversation about like what it means to be a writer and like how to write a book. Like there's a lot of that happening. You get introduced to a lot of her students right off the bat, and it kind of tells you like all the names of the students that she's going to be working with and like what books they are working on and like what are the themes in their books, which I think is so cool and so interesting. And something that I wasn't sure how I felt about in this book is that in between the chapters of following this main protagonist, we do get these like excerpts from her students writing. Like we get to see what her students are currently writing and what they're working on, which at first I was like, you know, I don't know if we need this, because those parts definitely feel like they're like dragging a little bit for me, just because I'm like, I don't know if I care about like what her students are currently writing. But I do think it is interesting to include it in the story. There's already been a lot of really fascinating conversations though about writing in general, and like whether we should be including like trigger warnings in writing for like readers who might be more sensitive. And then there's also a lot of like feminist talk about like writing females. There was this really great quote that I feel like really captures the vibes of this book so far, when she said, "Is there a way to write female without writing body? And whether there was a way to be female without being reduced to a body." And I thought that that was really interesting and very thought-provoking. I feel like that's like the kind of tone of this book so far. Like it has these like underlying feminist messages that I'm really liking about it so far. I don't know, so far it's going very well. I'm feeling very connected to the writing and this character. Like, dare I say, it's giving me 5-star vibes so far. Like I'm really liking this, and I'm surprised because like I had never even heard of this book, and it feels like right up my alley. So like, Elizabeth, oh my god, you might be onto something. Like this might be a 5-star for me, and I'm so excited about it. And so yeah, I'm gonna continue reading this one today. I'm currently doing some reading sprints on my Patreon right now, so hopefully I can get through most of this today. It's reading very quick, and the audiobook is only like 8 or 9 hours long, so it's gonna be a pretty quick read, I think, on audio, because the book is only around like 270-ish pages. Also, a quick life update is that it's snowing today. Like it is actually snowing so much. As I was saying last month, like it's been a very dry and warm January for the most part here in Washington, which is like very unusual for us. And I was wondering, like, are we even gonna get snow like at all this winter? And now today, oh my god, it's finally snowing, and it's like really snowing outside right now. We got like a little sprinkling of snow last night, but then it was raining this morning and it kind of like washed it away. But now it's about like 1:30 in the afternoon, and it is like coming down right now, and I'm like, oh my gosh, because we got a winter storm warning for tonight at 10 p.m. and for these next 2 days it's supposed to like really snow a lot. Like it said we could get up to 6 to 7 inches of snow. So I'm like, oh my gosh, because the snow is already coming down right now. It's so crazy. Also, another life update is that last night me and my sister finished watching season 4 of the originals, and like, dude, that season 4 finale just like ruined my life. Like, oh my god, like I'm gonna sue the writers of this show. Like, how could they do this to me? That felt like a personal attack. Like season 4, that finale, that was brutal. That like genuinely hurt me. Like my stomach was in knots when I was watching that episode. And so now we only have season 5 of the originals left, and there's only like 13 episodes left, and like, what am I even gonna do with myself once I catch up on this show? Like it's really just taken over my whole life. I just really love the originals like so much, and I just can't believe the things that I just saw in that season 4 finale. Ugh, man, my heart is broken, but I can't wait to watch season 5 and finish the show. Ugh. Hello, I am checking in because I just finished reading The Body Lies, and this one ended up being a very quick read. Like I was easily able to read this all in one afternoon. I will admit though, I do think like the last 50 pages of this book, it just kind of loses steam. You know, like I really thought like the entire time that I was reading this, I was like, oh my god, this is easily gonna be a 5-star. Like I was just loving it. I was connecting a lot with the characters in this and just with the writing in general, because I think the writing in this book is so good and it's so thought-provoking, and I just felt very connected to these characters and this story. I mean, I do tend to love books, you know, that follow writers, and I love that there was so much conversation about writing books in this story. And I like that this author doesn't shy away from some more, you know, controversial topics, like whether or not trigger warnings should be included in books and like why that matters. And then also like the way that women are written in books, and like, can we shy away from writing about women's bodies? I don't know, it's kind of interesting because as the book continues, you do realize like why there's the inclusion of like the students' stories in between the chapters, and I definitely enjoyed that a lot lot more as the story continued on, because you start to realize like what's actually going on. It does actually talk about this a little bit in the premise of the book, but I would recommend not reading the full premise for this, because I do think it gets a little bit spoilery. But I think actually in like the last like 50-ish pages of the book, it actually does start to read a little bit more like a thriller, but I just didn't really care for that direction of the story to go. And then by the ending of the book, it just kind of left me with this feeling of like, well, what was the point of all that at the end? Like, I don't know. I just didn't necessarily care for the ending of this book. So I do think I'm probably going to end up giving this one around 4 stars, but this is like such a strong 4-star for me. Like, this is something that I really enjoyed. Like, I was not expecting to love this book in the way that I did. There was even a really great quote that I ended up tabbing that I wanted to come back to, because I like how this character is talking about how like there's 2 different kinds of people, and it says there's the kind of person where you do them a favor and they're not comfortable until they've reciprocated in some kind of way or thanked you properly, like bought you a drink or chocolates or something. And then there's the other kind of person where if you do them a favor, they'll decide that favors are just what you do. You become the person who does them favors, and they'll keep on asking and asking, and you'll keep on doing and doing till you notice that they just don't ever reciprocate and they don't even properly thank you, and your goodwill is all used up. I thought that was such a powerful quote and like such an honest and like real quote. I am like a little bit bummed that I feel like the ending of this just kind of like dropped the ball a little bit, because I do think that there was a few different ways the story could have gone to have a lot more of an impactful ending. Like, I do see what the author was trying to do here, but I also think by leaning into the more like thriller feel, it kind of like lost its message a little bit. Like, I don't know. I actually preferred like the slow burn kind of like literary feel of the writing that we got in like the first 2/3 of this book. And so the ending wasn't my personal favorite, but overall, I'm so glad that I read this. Like, thank you so much to Elizabeth for this recommendation, because not only have I like never heard of this book, and I probably would have never picked it up on my own. And so it's always like such a lovely surprise to read something that I never have heard of, and I end up really connecting with it in a way that's really shocking to me. So like, thank you so much for this recommendation. And at this point, I am halfway through this video project. I've read 5 books so far. I'd say so far this experience is going pretty well, because, you know, I've had around 3 books that I've given around 3 to 3.5 stars. I've had 1 4-star and 1 5-star. So I am really glad and really relieved that I haven't disliked anything yet for this video, and I'm feeling really good about this project. So let's go on to the next. Meg has sent me her book rec video, and I am very excited to see what Meg recommends me. I feel like when it comes to Meg, I've noticed that we do tend to have some opposite taste, especially when it comes to thrillers. But I know that there's a series that Meg really loves, and it's the Thursday Murder Club series, or honestly anything by that author, like Richard Osman. I feel like she could recommend me any of the books from that author. But I know that last year Meg also really enjoyed the book Pachinko, which is a book that I've had on my TBR for like literally forever, and so it would be really cool if she recommended me that, because I would love to read that book. Okay, let's go ahead and watch this video from Meg.
Hello Gabby, it's Megan. Thank you so much for asking me to be a part of this video. I am so on it. So when I was thinking about what I wanted to recommend you, I went and had a look on your Goodreads. I did that thing on Goodreads where you can like compare books and see what we each gave ratings. I was thinking about what kind of books we both give high ratings and what similarities there are, what tropes, what themes there are in them. And then I thought, no, I'm not going to make a decision based on that. I've got an agenda to push. In fact, I've got multiple agendas to push. I'm going to recommend you 2 of my favourite books of all time. 2 of my favourite books of all time. You can pick which of them you'd rather read. I'm giving you options here. But there's not reasons I necessarily think you're going to love these books. I just love them and I want you to read them. That's what I'm using this space for. So, firstly, we have got The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman.
I knew it.
We have got The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss. 2 of my favourite books of all time. So, I'm sure you know probably what at least one of these, but both these are about. Thursday Murder Club is a group of friends at a retirement home in the UK solving murder mysteries. They originally had a Thursday Murder Club trying to solve cold case murder mysteries, but then murder mysteries start appearing at their doorstep. It's the perfect murder mystery. I love Richard Osman's writing. And Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter, we are following the daughters or female versions of classic characters from Victorian literature. Think Jekyll and Hyde, Frankenstein, Dracula, Dr. Moreau, like all of these characters from classic Victorian literature appear in this. Sherlock and Watson are in it too as characters who help out the girls, and it's these girls, these women solving a murder mystery together and becoming a found family. And I love both of these so much. I would recommend whichever one you pick to listen to the audiobook. I've heard from Americans who've read this that having the audiobook really helps with understanding the context behind things. So I'd recommend audiobooks for either of these. I'm excited to see what you pick. No pressure. just my favourite books of all time. No, I'm kidding. You cannot love them because I wouldn't recommend these based necessarily on your reading taste. I just have an agenda to push and I want more people to read these books forever and ever, always. So I'm so excited to see what you pick. I'm so excited to see what you think of it. And once again, thank you so much for asking me to be a part of this. Okay, now go make a decision. No pressure. Hope you love it.
Oh my god. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Meg, for this video. I'm so excited. I love when I get options, you know, because then it puts a little bit less pressure on me, actually, because then I can choose. Like, I'm choosing my own fate here. And like, that's so funny that I accurately guessed that she was gonna recommend me The Thursday Murder Club. Like, I just had a feeling because Meg has been hyping up this book for years, and so like, it makes sense. So I feel like that's the one that I should go with because like, that's the one that I was anticipating that she was gonna recommend. And I think out of those two books, that's probably the one that I'm most interested in reading is The Thursday Murder Club. So I am going to try to track down the audiobook for this one as well because, you know, as she said, the audiobook's going to help me understand things and I wouldn't have it any other way. So thank you so much to Meg. I appreciate you. I've started reading The Thursday Murder Club. I got up to chapter 24. I'm about 86 pages in at the moment. And so far, this one is going okay. I don't know. I've talked about this at the beginning of the video, how like cozy mysteries, like I respect them and I understand why they're so popular, but I just don't know if cozy mystery books like this are the kind of books for me personally. In this story, we are following these 4 unlikely friends who meet in this retirement village, and the retirement village is called Fairhaven, and together they try to solve crimes, and they basically call themselves the Thursday Murder Club because they meet every Thursday to talk about murders. And then there's like a local crime in the area where this man is found dead, and there's like this really suspicious photo that was left behind next to his dead body. And so these 4 characters decide like, okay, we're gonna try to solve a real active murder case. And so, you know, this is definitely a book that has a premise that I do feel like I've read before, like I've seen this trope before, right? Kind of does already remind me of that TV show Only Murders in the Building, like it kind of has that kind of vibe to it so far. But something that I'm finding to be a little bit confusing at the start of this book is that I feel like you get introduced to so many characters right off the bat. I mean, I don't know why I was thinking in my head that we were only going to be following like the 4 people that are living in the retirement village, but like that's not really the case. I mean, it's mainly these 2 women named Elizabeth and Joyce. Like they are the 2 main ones that we're following. Then we also follow like one of the female detectives named Donna. We follow another detective named Chris. There's all these character names just getting thrown at you at the start of this book. Like we have this guy Ian, we have Karen, Gordon, Ron, Tony, Debbie, Bogdan, Abraham. There are just so many people and so many names getting thrown at you at the start that I was like, oh my gosh, I was overwhelmed. I was like starting to take notes of like who all these people are because I just know that I'm gonna get them all mixed up in my head. I thought it was also a little bit confusing at the start because this author is like interchangeably using their first name and their last name at different times. So like I literally thought that this one character was like 2 different people until it said his full name and then I was like, oh, that's the same person. Like I was so confused. So like it is a little bit confusing getting into this, but I feel like I'm finally starting to get a grasp on like who all the characters are and like just getting more into the plot of the story. I mean, at this point, you know, the murder has happened and you're kind of following these characters as they're trying to figure out what actually happened. You know, I think I definitely am enjoying the perspective from like Joyce and Elizabeth the most out of all of these characters. Like I am so uninvested in the actual mystery that's going on because, you know, you do get the perspective of the guy like when he dies, like when he gets murdered, and then they're like, oh my god, a killer like left behind this photograph or whatever. You're getting a lot of like perspectives from these like businessmen who like I just don't care, to be honest. Like I don't care about reading from the perspective of like all these different people. I do like following, you know, like the older women who are living in their retirement home and like they're kind of talking about the murders. Like I think they're kind of like adorable and like I don't know, I do see the appeal with their characters, but like I don't need all of the other character perspectives. Like it's making the book feel really confusing in a way, and I feel like it's slowing down the pacing of the story for me. I kind of wish the scope was like a little bit smaller, if that makes sense, and we could just focus on these characters in the retirement home. I also like had to make a note at this one part because I thought it was so strange because I am listening to this one on audio, like, you know, Meg recommended, and I thought it was really interesting because in this print book it says that this character starts to make a point about Donald Trump, and I was like, what? And then on the audiobook, while I was listening along, it changed the name of Donald Trump to like a different person. Like I don't know who the name was that they changed it to. It was like David Cameron or something, I don't know. But I was like, whoa, that's weird, because I was like, why would the audiobook be different from the physical print book? And I was remembering how, you know, Meg was saying that this book does have a lot of like British humor or like British things that maybe Americans wouldn't understand. So I was like, did they like reprint this edition for Americans to make it more easy to grasp for like Americans to understand what the fuck? Like that was a jump scare to see Donald Trump's name in here. But like that was interesting, and I have noticed that there has been like a few changes on the audiobook. The wording in this will be slightly different than the way that the audiobook is read. So I am glad that I'm listening to this one on audio because I agree with what Meg said. I feel like a lot of this would be going way over my head if I didn't have the help of the audiobook. So I'm gonna continue reading this one. Today it is actually currently snowing again. Last night it didn't snow too much. Like we didn't get too much snow last night, but then the winter storm warning is coming through these next, couple of days. And so like we're gonna see how much snow we'll get. I'm currently getting ready to go over to my parents' house for the evening because I'm gonna be going over there to watch the Grammys. A lot of my faves are performing and a lot of my faves are nominated at the Grammys. So like I'm really excited to see who ends up winning Album of the Year because I feel like this is gonna be one of the most cutthroat years yet because there's so many incredible artists nominated for Album of the Year. So I'm really curious to see who's gonna win that one. Hello, it's been a little over 24 hours since I last updated you because yesterday I went to my parents' house to watch the Grammys, which ended up being so much fun. I was kind of surprised at some of the wins, to be honest. Like I didn't think that Beyonce's album Cowboy Carter was gonna win Album of the Year, and even though I really do like that album and I'm like a huge fan of Beyonce, I'm kind of surprised that it won, to be honest. Like I really thought that they were gonna give it to Billie Eilish, but good for Beyonce because this is like her first ever Album of the Year win, which is like so huge for her, even though we all know that Lemonade got robbed. Okay, when Lemonade was up for Album of the Year, that's when she should have won. Overall, it was a really great show. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy that Sabrina Carpenter won Pop Vocal Album because Short and Sweet is probably like my favorite album from last year. So I was really excited to see her win, and I was so happy to see Chapel Roan win Best New Artist, and Kendrick Lamar just absolutely swept last night. So like that was also great to see. But anyway, yeah, it's been snowing so much. Like it snowed a lot last night, and then this morning it was so cold and so windy that the weather app, it was only like 25 degrees, but it said feels like 5 degrees. And it's just been like really cold and it looks like a winter wonderland outside. And I'm probably going to be snowed in for at least like the next 2 days because there's a lot of snow outside right now. Just finished reading The Thursday Murder Club, and I've been kind of dreading this update, to be honest, because I'm so sorry, Meg. I just don't really think that this was the book for me. I mean, I am still going to give this around like 2.5 out of 5 stars, I think. It's just so hard for me to rate a book like this because if I wasn't reading this book for this video, I would have definitely DNF'd this book because I just don't think that this is the kind of book for me, but I wanted to give it a fair chance because, Meg just loves this book so much, and I know that this book is really loved by so many people. Like, there's a whole book series with this book, and a lot of people really, really love it. I don't know, there was so much about this story that just didn't work for me personally. I think the thing that really, saves this book for me is the main characters that we're following. Like, the characters Elizabeth and Joyce, they were very fun to follow, and the idea of the Thursday Murder Club is very fun, and I think that's very enjoyable. And I think the characters in this book are very strong, but also there are just so many characters, and in my opinion there's way too many characters to the point where the story just gets bogged down by me being wait, who is this? Who is that? And I keep having to go back through my notes trying to figure out who are we even talking about right now? I wasn't that invested in the mystery in this book, but that is usually the feeling that I get when I do read these kind of cozy mystery books. I always find myself not that invested in the mystery. I felt exactly the same way about this book with how I did with that book that's called How to Solve Your Own Murder. Both of these books are very interchangeable to me, and any books like this, I get the appeal and I see why people like them. I just really don't think they're for me. And there were a few little twists and turns and things at the end that I thought were kind of surprising, but I also didn't care enough about anything that I was reading to really be surprised by anything, It's my lowest rated of the videos so far, and I feel so bad. I'm sorry, Meg. But I'm glad that I gave it a shot because at least now I know. All right, and now we are on to the next. Friend Jan has sent me her recommendation, and I'm so excited. I'm so nervous and excited to see what Jan is going to recommend because I feel like me and Jan, we either have exactly the same taste or we have completely opposite. And so I think it'll be really fun to get a recommendation from Jan. If I had to predict what she's going to recommend me, I feel like it's either going to be a cowboy romance. There's a high chance that she could recommend me Flawless or Heartless by Elsie Silver. Maybe she also could recommend me something fantasy because Jan does tend to read a little bit more fantasy than I do. I know that she loved that book, The Favorite, and she compared it to Addie LaRue, so maybe that is something that I could actually end up enjoying. Oh my god, I don't know what she's gonna recommend, so let's watch it and figure it out together. I'm so excited.
What's up, it's Jan. Hello, Gabby. Thank you so much for inviting me onto this project. I am so honored to give you a rec today. But I have 5. And we're gonna do like a little process of elimination thing really quickly. Hopefully this is under a minute, probably not. But I did stock your Goodreads. These are all from your want to read list.
Oh my
and
God.
they're 5 stars for me. But what we're not gonna choose is ripe, even though I think about this every day. But I always tell people you have to be in the right mindset for this.
I would love to
because
read ripe.
It has a lot of negative topics and trigger warnings and stuff.
Oh shit. Okay.
Horrid was a choice, but it's YA and it has a lot of long chapters. Not this one, just in case you're not in the mood for that, nor in the mood for YA.
Okay.
But it is really good.
Okay.
History of Fear, I love this one,
okay.
but it does have a slower pace because it has the gothic vibes.
Okay.
But I feel like you might like this one as well.
Ooh.
But that's not the one. Black Buck is still not the one, but I highly recommend this. I think this is so underrated,
heard of Black
but
Buck.
it has a lot of like it has a lot of satire and
Okay.
politic talk.
Okay.
So again, have to be in the right mindset for this, or else it won't hit. It's not as funny
Okay.
if you are not in the mood.
I'm
for
scared. What
satire.
is this 5th one gonna
But
be?
I should still read that eventually. And the winner is My Darling Dreadful Thing by Joanna Vlinky.
I should have predicted
This was my vote for the Goodreads Choice Awards horror nominees.
Yes, that's right.
This is a sapphic, gothic, murder mystery type of book.
Okay.
It's super well written. It's brilliantly like paced and formatted. It's kind of mixed media.
Okay.
Just the timelines and the way it's like laid out. I don't really know how to explain it, but it's so good.
Okay.
There's a toxic mother-daughter relationship. Just the vibes are great. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. I hope you like this one as much as I did. Thank you once again. Love you the most.
Oh my gosh.
I can't wait to watch this video.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, first of all, thank you so much to Jan for the recommendations. I was not expecting 5. Like, that's really cool. And it's actually really nice because there was a few books in there that I definitely want to read, like Ripe and Black Book for sure. Oh my gosh, I should have guessed My Darling Dreadful Thing. I knew how much Jan loved that book. We actually talked about it when we met in Chicago because she was reading it, I think, when I met her. Oh my god, that's so crazy. Well, thank you so much to Jan for the recommendation. I'm so excited to read My Darling Dreadful Thing. It's about time, to be honest. Hello, I wanted to check in because I have started reading My Darling Dreadful Thing. I was able to get this book checked out from my library, and I just hit chapter 13. I'm about 120 pages in, and I very recently just hit a part 2 section of the book. So far, this one is going well. I mean, there are some things that I'm really liking about this. Like, I do love the fact that this is a horror book. It has this very, like, gothic kind of vibe to it, but it also does kind of have this, like, historical feel to it in a way because the book takes place in the 1950s, I'm pretty sure. And the general premise for this one is that we're following this character, and her name is Ruth. And Ruth is special because she's able to see this ghost named Ruth, and she's able to, like, communicate with her spirit, and she kind of, like, views her as a sister. And this character, Ruth, she's currently living with her mom, and like her mom is just the absolute worst because her mom kind of like takes advantage of her because she knows what she's able to do, and she sells these like staged seances to like all of these people in the area. And then one day there's this widow who comes in named Agnes, and these two kind of like really hit it off. It was kind of like confusing to me a little bit the way that this is written because it talks about how our main character, she can like possess a spirit. So it's not totally clear to me if she can just like see the spirit or if she's like getting possessed by the spirit every time she communicates with it. But this woman named Agnes is like really fascinated with her, and I can see that this is where the like sapphic kind of vibes are going to come into the story. And basically she ends up leaving with Agnes to go to her estate. And in the description of this book, it says, at her estate, there's an ill woman who haunts the halls and something dreadful festers in the manor. But it says, still, the attraction between Ruth and Agnes is undeniable, then someone is murdered. So that's kind of the vibes of this one so far. I mean, at about 100 pages in, I'm only now just getting to the part where they are going to Agnes's estate. So I feel like the story could definitely pick up from this point forward. But it is kind of going by quickly so far because, you know, like Jan said, this one does have some mixed media elements where like in between the chapters of like following from their perspective, you get these like case studies, these case study episodes where like they're talking to her about like what happened, and it's almost like written in like an interview style in those chapters. So I am liking the inclusion of that, but like so far I'm finding this to be okay. I don't know, like I'm kind of bored with it so far for some reason, because right now it does feel a little bit like slow moving and I don't feel as connected to these characters right away as I was hoping to feel. I'm just planning on, you know, staying in and reading all day today. I mean, I did some video editing that I had to get done this morning and it is still very snowy outside, like to the point where I'm probably still gonna be snowed in for like a couple of days, which is great because like I have plenty of time to read. Also, another life update is that I think tonight me and my sister are gonna finish watching the entirety of the show The Originals. We only have 2 episodes left of the whole show. And like last night we watched about like 6 episodes. Like we really probably could have finished it last night, but I was like, no, like I need time to process what I've been seeing because season 5 has been so emotional. Like what the heck? I've been crying in like every single episode of season 5. I cannot believe these writers. Like if you know, you know, but I cannot believe what they've done. Like how dare they? Like I will sue these writers. Like I'm so upset. But season 5 has been so good. Like don't get me wrong, it's been really good, but like my heart is just like shattered. It's just like breaking in every single episode. So I know that finishing this show tonight is going to absolutely break me. I mean, this show has already broken me, clearly. It is much later in the evening now. It's almost 10 o'clock at night and I have some updates. The first of the updates is that I finished reading My Darling Dreadful Thing. I can totally see why Jan would recommend this book to me, you know, because it has all of the ingredients to be something that I would love. I mean, like the spooky gothic atmosphere and the sapphic vibes and the sapphic yearning just had a lot of things that would usually like check a lot of boxes for me in books, but unfortunately I just don't think that this was the book for me. I think I'm gonna give this around 2.5 stars. I'm so sorry, Jan. I think personally, if I was just reading this on my own, I think I actually would have DNF'd this because I just thought the plot was so slow. And you know, it really sucks because I do think that the first 30-ish% of this book was like the most intriguing part of the book for me, because I feel like after these 2 characters get to the house, I feel like the pacing of the book just gets so slow and like nothing really that interesting happens. I actually like was starting to skim in those like last 100 pages and I decided that I wanted to try and finish this today because I knew that I was not going to want to pick up this book again tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like I was like, I have to finish it tonight or I'm not gonna finish it because I'm not gonna want to pick it up again. I also don't understand why like towards the end of this book I feel like the chapters got so much longer, which also made the pacing feel like it was dragging even more for me in the second half of the story. I don't know if it was just me, but I feel like I had trouble visualizing some of the things that this author was trying to describe. I mean, don't get me wrong, the themes in this book were really strong. Like I feel like this is one of those like beautifully tragic stories and the sapphic yearning was like really well written. I just don't feel like I ever really connected with these characters, and there are some like really dark and like disturbing and graphic things happening on page in this book, especially in the second half of this book, but I guess I just didn't care enough about the plot and about like what was happening to really feel fully invested in this story. I feel like sometimes books that get described as being like gothic horror, I don't know, like sometimes they can end up really like not being my thing, because I feel like if a book is described as gothic, in my opinion, sometimes that means it's like very slow paced and just like not all that interesting, which is so unfortunate because like I want to love things that are gothic, but most of the time I just find them to be so slow moving, and I really feel like this book could have benefited by being like 100 to 200 pages shorter than what it was. So that is truly unfortunate, and I do apologize to Jan. I honestly think that I should just read the book Ripe, you know, very soon in the future, because that is one that Jan kind of recommended to me that I feel like I could have so much more success with that one. I mean, obviously I don't know because I haven't read it yet, but I feel like that book might get a higher rating from me than this one did. I don't know, I'll have to read it soon and I'll let you know. But anyway, my other big update is that I just finished watching The Originals with my sister. We watched the last 2 episodes of the series tonight, and like I am so emotional. Oh my god, like I was crying throughout the entire last 2 episodes. And overall, I'm obsessed with the show. Like I think this show was even better than The Vampire Diaries, and I know that that's like crazy to say because The Originals is kind of like a spin-off of The Vampire Diaries and you're following the original vampires, the original family. I am so emotionally attached to Klaus and to Elijah as characters, and I actually can't decide which of their characters characters I like more. Like, I love Klaus and Elijah both for different reasons. And don't even get me started on Haley. Like, Haley is one of my favorite characters in the whole show as well. And like, Elijah and Haley is one of my biggest ships of all time. Like, I think they're my biggest ship in the entirety of the Vampire Diaries universe. And I'm just like very obsessed with the show overall. Like, I immediately want to start rewatching it. Like, oh my god, I loved it so much. I mean, I would highly recommend watching the originals, obviously, but I think you have to watch the Vampire Diaries before you watch the originals to get the full impact, because there is a lot of crossover between the shows. And I think if you watch the originals without having watched the Vampire Diaries, then you're not going to get the full impact of the show, especially with like some of the things happening towards the end of the originals. Like, oh my god. But I also think if you were ever like a huge fan of the Vampire Diaries and you haven't watched the originals, or if you ever gave up on it at any point, oh my god, please continue. It's a little bit slow at the beginning, but like, oh my god, it's just so good by the end. And I'm so emotional. Like, I already miss these characters so much. I got even more attached to the characters in the originals than I did with the characters in the Vampire Diaries, and that's crazy. Like, I never thought that I would say that. I know there is still the show Legacies, which also follows some of the characters from this universe, so like, I do think I want to watch Legacies eventually, but I'm gonna need time to grieve over the originals because it's like my new favorite thing ever. Like, it's my whole personality. Me and my friend Jan have been like sending each other voice messages all night about the originals because he's watching it for the first time too, and it's just the best feeling. Like, fangirling with some of my friends over a new TV show obsession is like my favorite thing ever. Anyway, I am bummed that this book didn't end up going super well for me, so hopefully we will have more success on this next book. My friend Lexi ended up sending me the video, so let's watch it. I'm so excited. Trying to guess what Lexi is gonna recommend me is a little bit more difficult because Lexi reads a lot more broadly than I do, I think, because not only does she read like the horror and the thriller books, but then she also reads like a lot of fantasy. So like, there's a chance she could recommend me something fantasy here. At this point in time, Lexi still hasn't posted her best books of the year from last year yet, but I know that she loved that book Don't Let the Forest In, and that's like a young adult horror type of book that I've been really interested in actually, so like maybe there's a chance she could recommend me that one. I don't know, we're just gonna have to watch it together, so let's see.
Hi Gabby. Okay, so for your challenge, I have two options because I don't know what mood you're actually in, and honestly, I feel like you should pick whatever sounds better to you, but I only have two, so you can choose which one you'd like to read. So, you know, maybe you want something scary, maybe you want something tragic. So for the first book, I actually, listen, I went through all of your favorites on Goodreads. So I tried really hard to like tailor both of these to something that I love, but also maybe something that you'll like too. So for the very first one, I saw that you like weird literary fiction, and like me too. So you like I'm a Fan and Big Swiss and My Year of Rest and Relaxation.
Oh my god, she's
and
got the
also
actual
that you like
books.
Blue Sisters. And so my very first option that you can choose is When We Lost Our Heads by Heather O'Neill. This is so freaking good. Like, I can't even describe it, okay? So this book is about two girls, and they become besties instantaneously, but then they become frenemies as well. And there is so much pining between them. It's very dramatic and incredibly juicy. I can't explain why I think you're gonna like this. I just think you're gonna like this. And this is one of the best books.
Wow, look at all this editing on the screen.
Highly recommend it. But if you're not feeling literary fiction, then maybe you'll want to go with horror. And for that, I highly recommend this YA book called Don't Let the Forest In.
I literally guessed that she was going to recommend me this.
This book is everything, okay? I was going through some of your reviews, and the things that you like best in horror, you really like it when it is weird and gruesome, but also thought-provoking, and you also like it when it's a book that will also pull on your heartstrings and make you emotionally connected with it. And to be honest, Gabby, this book does all of that. It's gruesome, it's disgusting, it's body horror, but it will make you cry, okay? It made me sob. I have technically read this 3 times already, and it just came out this last October. It's about a guy named Andrew. He goes to a boarding school, and once he's there, he thinks that his friend Thomas is keeping secrets from him, and monsters are involved, pining is involved, love is involved. It's really, really good. That's all I'll say. I think you should pick it up. I hope you like one of these. I'm excited to see which one you pick, and I'm excited to see what you think of it. Bye, Gabby!
Wow, okay, first of all, Lexi did the research. Okay, this girl put in the research. I appreciate it. Oh my god. She was like pulling up my Goodreads reviews and like circling things. Like, what? Are you kidding me? Honestly, both of those books have been on my radar, and both of those books are books that I'm excited to read. Like, how am I supposed to choose? Oh my gosh, the fact that I thought that she could recommend me Don't Let the the forest in, and then she did. Like, oh my god, yes. I don't know which book I'm gonna choose. It's probably gonna come down to if my library has it and like if I can get my hands on it. Maybe I'll check Kindle Unlimited to see if any of them are on there. Oh my god, thank you, Lexi. I don't know how I'm gonna choose. I really want to read both of these books, so like this is fantastic. Hello, I'm checking in with an update because I have started reading Don't Let the Forest In. I decided to go with this one even though I was really interested in both of the picks from Lexi, because both of these books have been on my TBR and have been books that I'm curious to check out. So I do have plans to read the other book, but I decided to go with this one, and I wanted to update you because I just hit chapter 9. I'm about 80 pages in, and dude, holy shit, I am obsessed. This is already feeling like it's gonna be 5 stars. Like, I'm loving this so much. I've already started like annotating with my pens. Like, I already had to make a little mark for like all my different annotations and like start highlighting the crap out of this because I am loving this so much more than I thought I would. You know, I was a little bit nervous to start this book because I feel like when it comes to like young adult horror, kind of like romance books like this, I feel like young adult is a genre that I just don't really feel super connected to anymore. But this, oh my god, like there's something about the writing in this book. It is so beautiful. So the main premise of the story is that we're following this high school senior boy whose name is Andrew, and he is a writer and he writes these like fairy tales. And this story takes place at this school that's called Wickwood Academy, and Andrew has a twin sister named Dove, but Andrew is like really in love with this boy named Thomas. And it's really cool because Thomas is really into art and he's like a painter and an illustrator and he loves to draw. And so it's cute because he's like, you'll write the stories and then I'll design the cover because he likes to draw and the other boy likes to write. But the thing is that Andrew and Thomas, like they're really close friends, but Andrew believes that Thomas is like in love with his sister Dove. So it's kind of like juicy and interesting right off the start because he's kind of like convinced himself that Thomas likes his sister, but like I don't even think that's true. Oh my god, I think Thomas is just as obsessed with Andrew as Andrew is with Thomas, and like, oh my god, the chemistry between them is already so good. And then the main, you know, like premise of this book is that one day Thomas shows up at the school with blood on his sleeve, and they find out that his parents were killed that day. And so of course he becomes like the #1 suspect in this situation, but Andrew like wants to believe that like he's not capable of like killing his own parents. Thomas is definitely giving like bad boy kind of vibes, but he's also like very protective of Andrew, and it's just like, oh my god, it's so beautiful. And it seems like Thomas is like being haunted by something, like something feels very wrong with him right now because he's like not even that interested in his art, and he's like pushing his friend, like his closest friend, away because he's trying to protect him. And I love how this book is kind of like, it feels like it's told from both Andrew and Thomas's perspective at times. Like the writing style is really interesting. It's kind of like this third person writing style where you do get into the head of both of these characters at times, and I love that about this. And then also the fucking asexual representation, like I'm fucking screaming. I think I did know at some point about the asexual rep in this book, but I totally forgot about it, and I was really taken off guard by the asexual moments in this because I was like, oh my god, because you know, I'm asexual if you didn't know, and I have been feeling so seen by this character. I have been highlighting everything in purple anytime this character talks about how he thinks he might be asexual. I love when it said he didn't even know if he was gay enough when there was only one boy he wanted. A small reserved part of him knew he must be asexual and that being gay enough wasn't a thing, but he looked at other boys and felt nothing. So maybe the only reason he didn't want Thomas to kiss Dove was so their trio wouldn't change, not because he wanted to kiss Thomas, or maybe he did. Oh my god, I love the vibes of this so much. And like, I love the fact that our main character's asexual, and I love that he's like a young queer kid who's like still figuring out his sexuality. Like, oh my god, I just adore this. And dude, the writing in this book is just so good. Like, there's already so much yearning between these boys, I can't even handle it. One of the first quotes when it says, other people existed only in Thomas's periphery, but the twins eclipsed his entire galaxy. There was something intoxicating about meaning that much to one person, addictive. When it says, this boy did what he wanted on impulse and regretted nothing. Andrew wanted that to be so full of fierce life it spilled over his edges. Like, look at how much I'm already annotating per page. Dude, I'm so sorry, but I think it's because, you know, like I just finished watching the originals yesterday, and I've been like so obsessed with the originals over these last few weeks, and I am telling you that Thomas, like his character, he's giving Klaus Michelson. Like, he is absolutely 1000% Klaus Michelson. Not only because, you know, like he's interested in art and he has like abusive parents, and when it says fear didn't suit him, he was meant to be invincible. And when he tells him, I think someday you'll hate me, you'll cut me open and find a garden of rot where my heart should be. And when Andrew says, oh, there was a wildness about him, this boy made of angular frowns and thorny words. He was brilliant and terrible and unmanageable. Dude, I'm telling you, this character is teenage Klaus if he was queer, which like, because Klaus is like my favorite character in the entire Vampire Diaries universe. So it's going very well so far. Clearly, I'm not able to shut up about it after only 80 pages in. I'm concerned for myself. Oh my god, I'm gonna go on a deep dive with this tonight. And yeah, if you were wondering, it's currently like day 3 or maybe 4 of being snowed in. I'm not totally sure. Later tonight, I'm gonna go out and get dinner with Rachel and Obed because Obed's able to get out with his truck.
Words left on the shelf, full of dust, you'll know it's me and from nobody else. Grab your seat.
Hello, it is a little bit later in the night. It's now about like 9:30. Tonight was a really great night. You know, I ended up going out to dinner with Rachel and Obed, and we actually went to this Mexican place that I've never been to before, and it was so good. And while we were at the restaurant, it started snowing again. Afterwards, we ended up getting blizzards from Dairy Queen because we were like joking that we should get blizzards in the blizzard. And I've also just been sitting in bed. I'm still reading Don't Let the Forest In, and I'm now about like 190 pages in. I just hit chapter 20. I don't want to jinx it, but I feel like this could be my favorite book that I've read so far this year. Like, I am absolutely obsessed with this. Oh my god, like the writing in this book is just so stunning. I am annotating and tabbing so many different things. Like, there are so many moments that I want to come back to. The freaking yearning between these two boys, like, oh my god, it's so beautiful. Like the way that this relationship is written between them, but it also reads like so slow burn because Andrew is still convinced somehow that Thomas has feelings for his sister, which is like so not true. And the writing in this book, oh my god, it just has me screaming. Like, they're literally so adorable. So listen to this one line and tell me this is not the cutest shit you've ever heard. It says, "I like how you are. There's an entire world of ink and magic stuffed inside your head, and I think it's beautiful. I just wish everything didn't hurt you so much." There was an explosion happening in Andrew's chest, 1,000 flowered vines growing around his heart. Thomas never talked like this, soft and vulnerable. Maybe it was easier to whisper sweet and aching things in the dark. Is that not so cute? And the way that he like describes feeling broken because he wants to fall in love but he doesn't want to have sex, like, oh, this poor sweet little baby, oh my god. I also just can't get over the atmosphere in this book. Like, there's just the best atmosphere of like the forest and like this academy where they're going to school. Like, I can just imagine everything so vividly with quotes like this when it says, "The night was a living thing, breathing with them as they stood in the forest. Moss thickened in their lungs and they could taste autumn leaves." Bro, the writing is just stunning, like pop off. And there's even been a lot of drawings included in the book, like a lot of the drawings that Thomas is doing throughout the story you get to actually see. And then I didn't even realize that in the premise of this book, it tells you that the main like thing that's happening in this book and why it's so scary is that the monsters that Thomas is drawing, all of the monsters are like coming to life. It says Thomas's drawings have come to life and are killing anyone close to him. To make sure no one else dies, the boys battle the monsters every night. As their obsession with each other grows stronger, so do the monsters. Like, oh my god, I have a feeling that the ending of this book, it might hurt me. I think I'm gonna go downstairs and make some tea, and then I think I'm gonna try to finish this tonight because like I need to drop everything and finish this book. Like, I don't want to do anything else right now. I love it so much. What the fuck? Okay, it's now 11 o'clock at night. I just finished reading Don't Let the Forest In. Bitch, are you kidding me? That ending had me emotional, as I kind of knew it was going in that direction. Like, I knew the ending was gonna make me emotional, and it did. Literally, the ending, I like gasped, and then I started crying. And then when I read the first thing in the acknowledgements of this book, the author said, "I left a piece of my heart in this dark little book. If you've turned the last page and are now frowning at the wall, then everything is as it should be." And I'm like, literally, that ending, I was just like, bitch, what? Just like staring at the wall, like, how could you just... I mean, I love that it ended right there. Like, I love it. Don't get me wrong, but I was like, oh my god. You know, it is so rare that I enjoy young adult books these days, so I don't know why. I was expecting to feel kind of like lukewarm about this one. Like, I thought this would be something that I would like, but I did not think that this was gonna be something that I would like absolutely love, like 6-star book. This is my favorite book that I've read so far this year, and the more that I think about this book, the more I realize that this really does remind me of A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, which like, this is one of my all-time favorite favorite books. I think it's like the writing style in this book and like the overall tone and the way you're dealing with these young boys who are very sad. Then also like the idea of a monster coming out of the woods. It definitely has very similar vibes to A Monster Calls. But then also like, I don't know if this is dramatic to say, but after finishing this book, I kind of feel like it gave me the same feeling that I had after finishing We Are the Ants by Sean David Hutchinson, which is so crazy to say because, you know, We Are the Ants is like one of my top favorite books that I've ever read in my life. And I really do think it gave me the same feeling because like this book, you know, We Are the Ants follows a teenage boy named Henry who's also queer. He's kind of like navigating his feelings about life and the world. There's this boy named Diego in this book who he really starts to fall for, and Diego's kind of troubled, just like Thomas is in this book. And like, I don't know, there's a lot of similarities here happening in both of these books. I feel like with this book, it has more of like the space vibes and like big questions about like the universe and like aliens and like that kind of stuff. Whereas this book is more like academic setting and like forest vibes and like creepy, spooky horror vibes. Because this one's not horror at all. This one's more like sci-fi contemporary kind of vibes. Whereas this one feels a little bit more horror, a little bit more like whimsical. Like the writing in this book is just so beautiful. Oh my god. And this was like my ideal kind of like slow burn romance. Like god, I can't even tell you the last time that I actually gave a shit about a young adult romance. And I also loved the asexual representation. Like I can't speak on this enough. And I love how this book kind of talks about how like asexuality is different for everybody because it's such a spectrum. But like this character being able to like talk about his feelings and kind of navigating his feelings, like it was just so beautiful to see. And like the ending of this book was surprising to me. Like there was something in the plot that I was like, bitch, are you fucking kidding me? Like why did I not see that coming? Like oh my god, my heart. Ugh, this was just everything. Oh my god, I loved it. I love this so much more than I thought I would. So thank you to Lexi for recommending me this one. I can see it now. I see why this was her favorite book of last year. Anyway, I could not be more excited about the fact that I just read a new all-time favorite book. Like genuinely the best feeling in the world. Anyway, let's get on to the next thing. Hello, I am checking in because my friend Erin has just sent me her recommendation video and I am so equally excited but also like very nervous to see what Erin's gonna recommend to me because I think out of all of my BookTube friends, I think Erin reads the most fantasy for sure, like hands down. I think for sure Erin's gonna recommend me a fantasy book. Like I would be shocked if she didn't. I know one fantasy book that she really enjoyed is The Will of the Many, which is like a really popular one right now. Maybe she could recommend that to me. I would be interested in reading that maybe. And then also if she wasn't gonna recommend me something that's fantasy, I mean, I know that she loved that book Vera Wong. I forget what the full title is, but that was one that she gave 5 stars to after a drought of like a year or something like that. Like she didn't have a 5-star for like such a long time until that book. So maybe she'll recommend me that one, but I seriously doubt it. I think it's gonna be a fantasy book, so let's find out together.
Hi, Gabby! Thank you so much for asking me to be a part of your 10 years on BookTube celebration. When you asked me, I immediately knew the book that I was going to choose. It is probably my #1 most recommended book, and it is one of my favorite books of all time. I read it back in 2020, and I still think about it almost every day.
2020.
So it is a bit outside of your usual, and I don't think this is a book that you would expect me to recommend, but it has a lot of my favorite things, and I think it has a lot of things that you like as well.
I'm intrigued.
The book in question the book in question is The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. This is the first book in the Cemetery of the Forgotten Books, but you don't have to read them in order. They're like interconnected standalone types. And so this is like historical fiction mystery with a little bit of like gothic romance. So in this one, we're following our main character, Danielle. He is, I want to say 11 or 12 years old at the beginning of the story. And he and his father run a bookshop, and one day his father decides that he is old enough to go to the Cemetery of Forgotten Books. It is where there's like a copy of every book ever written. Sometimes it's the last remaining copy of said book, and he gets to pick a book of his own to take out of the library, and he becomes like the owner and like the arbiter of this specific book. He's the only person that has one. He picks up a book in this library, and it is The Shadow of the Wind by Julian Caras, and he falls in love with it, and he's like, this is the best thing I've ever read. But someone is systematically going throughout the city. It's 1940s Barcelona, and they are destroying every single copy of this book in existence. And because someone finds out that Danielle has a copy, he gets embroiled in this whole thing. I highly recommend the audiobook. The audiobook is stupendous. It is honestly one of the best audiobooks I've ever heard, and I think you'll really like it. So I hope you love this as much as I do. If you don't, please lie. Thanks. Bye.
Oh my god, Erin! Thank you so much, Erin. Thank you. Okay, wow. I'm kind of shocked that she didn't recommend me a fantasy book. I'm really shocked. Like, I don't know if I've ever heard of that one. Shadow of the Wind? Okay, I'm definitely gonna have to check this one out on audio for sure. That is so exciting. Thank you so much to Erin. I really appreciate you. And like the way that Erin was describing this, like it does sound like something that I could be into. I mean, I don't always love historical fiction. It is a genre that's very hit or miss for me, but this one does sound pretty cool. And I don't really think I've ever heard anyone talk about it in this way before. So I'm intrigued. Let's do it. Okay, hello. I am checking in with my first update because I have started reading The Shadow of the Wind and I'm now 132 pages in. And I'm not gonna lie, out of all of the books that I'm reading for this video, this one was definitely one of the most intimidating recommendations for me, just because I had a feeling that this was going to be very outside of my comfort zone with what I typically read. I'm not gonna lie, like that first chapter definitely hooked me, or it wasn't even the first chapter, it was like the prologue, because the story opens with this chapter called The Cemetery of Forgotten Books. And I thought that that was really interesting because you're following from the perspective of this character when he's like 10 or 11 years old, and his dad takes him to this place called The Cemetery of Forgotten Books. And it was really cool because he says, every book, every volume you see here has a soul. The soul of the person who wrote it and of those who read it and lived and dreamed with it. Every time a book changes hands, every time someone runs his eyes down its page, its spirit grows and strengthens. And it says, according to tradition, the first time someone visits this place, he must choose a book, whichever he wants, and adopt it, making sure that it will never disappear, and that way it always stays alive. And he says, today it's your turn. And I was like, whoa, like that's kind of an interesting setup. And so he ends up choosing the book, The Shadow of the Wind, and he finds out that this is like the only copy of this book in the world that exists. But I feel like ever since, you know, that first prologue of the book, I feel like I've started to lose interest a lot. I was kind of bummed because I thought the introduction of this idea of like a cemetery of forgotten books was so cool, but like that's not really what this story is about. Right at the beginning of this book, we are introduced to so many characters, and I've been trying to take notes on my phone to keep reminding myself like who's who, and I think I'm still getting a little bit lost in the plot of this book. This story has been having a few different like time jumps, like there's a few different sections of the book, so we're following this character throughout many years of his life, and I keep going in and out of like feeling interested in the story and then feeling very uninterested in the story. I mean, I don't know, okay, for me, this kind of reads like a classic book, and you know, classics are just not really my personal thing. Like I find myself getting so bored every single time that I try to read classic books. It's just something about the way that they're written. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think the writing in this book is like absolutely stunning at times. Like the writing itself is just so beautiful, it's so atmospheric. There's just something about the writing that is very stunning, and I can see why a lot of people would really love this and really connect with this. But I think outside of the beautiful writing, there's like nothing else about the story that I'm really enjoying right now. I also think, you know, part of the reason why I don't like to read a lot of historical fiction is because of the misogynistic view of women. Gosh, there are just so many comments that are so awful about women from so many of these male characters, and it's just really annoying. And I know that that's probably the author just like trying to make a point about misogyny or like about sexism, and I know that this book takes place in the 1940s, so I know that it's not necessarily the book's fault, but like it's just so obnoxious to keep reading all of these very sexist comments from all of these male characters. I just feel so bad because I know that Erin loves this book. I know that there are so many people that love this book. Like when I'm looking on Goodreads, this has an average of like 4.3 out of 5 with over 600,000 ratings, and I know that this book is considered an all-time favorite by so many people, and like that's why it kills me so much that I'm not really clicking with this. I am listening to it on audio, by the way, and the audiobook is really interesting because the audiobook will just have these like random moments of piano that like come into the background like during the narration, and I'm like, whoa, like where did that come from? And it'll just happen like in the middle of a chapter, just like one random paragraph, there will be like some piano playing in the background. I mean, it definitely adds to the ambiance of the audiobook, like that's for sure. But anyway, I think I am going to try to read a little bit more of this tomorrow. I think I want to get at least 100 more pages into this, and if I'm still not enjoying it at that point, then I'm probably going to end up DNFing. But I want to give this book a fair chance. Like I want to get a little bit further in and give this book time because, you know, this one almost is 500 pages. Okay, hi, hello, it is the next day now. I am now just over 200 pages into the book. I just hit chapter 25 and I'm still feeling, you know, very similar to how I felt about this book yesterday, but I think I have decided that I do want to go ahead and just finish this book because like I am committed to finishing every single book in this vlog, even if it's not necessarily something that I feel like is the book for me, but I want to give this a fair chance. So I'm still currently listening listening to this on audio, and at this point I'm about like 55% of the way through it, so I am a little bit more than halfway. And at the speed that I'm listening to it, I still have about 3-ish hours left of this on audio, so I'm just gonna continue listening to this throughout the day. I keep going back and forth between whether or not this is something that I'm enjoying, because there will be comments like this, which I made a note of, when this character says, I say reading is for people who have a lot of time and nothing to do, like women. Those of us who have to work don't have time for make-believe, we're too busy earning a living. And then the other character says, well, that's an opinion, and he goes, it's not an opinion, it's a fact. Like, oh my god, it's just, there's so many comments like this about women throughout the book. It's just very obnoxious. Like, I know that the author is probably not misogynistic and it's probably just trying to convey some kind of message, but like, it's just so annoying to keep reading about this over and over again. But then there will be moments like this where the character will say things like, slowly I became possessed by the absurd conviction that everything was possible, and it seemed to me that even those deserted streets and that hostile wind smelled of hope. God, you know, like sometimes the writing in this book is just so stunning and it really pops off. I do think that if I was just reading this on my own, I probably would have DNF'd at this point, but I am becoming slightly more invested 200 pages in than I was about 100 pages ago. But I do plan to try to finish this one up today. I am committed to finishing this book. And I think this afternoon, it's about 2:15 in the afternoon, I think I'm gonna try to go to the gym. I mean, you know, I've been pretty much snowed in this apartment like this entire week. Okay, hello, it is now 10 o'clock at night, but I have an update for you, and I have finished reading Shadow of the Wind. Oh my god, I did it! Did it take me all day? Yes, it did. I kept getting distracted from this book, and so I kept having to leave and come back to it, but I finally finished it, and unfortunately, like, I don't really think that I'm gonna be the kind of person who can contribute a lot to this conversation about this book. Unfortunately though, I do think that this book is only going to be around a 3-star for me. Not that that's any surprise at all, but I was actually kind of surprised. I do think the last like third of this book is the strongest part of this book for me, and then especially the last 50 pages were very powerful. And like the last line of this book kind of gave me like full body chills, and I was like, okay, like I can see why people really love this one and why people are really connecting with it. I think my biggest issue with this book is that I just personally never really felt that connected to the characters. And then also I thought, you know, while the writing is like really beautiful and really stunning, there was also like a lot of issues that I had with the writing, like just the pacing in general, because you know, most of this book, it doesn't really feel like the kind of book that has much plot at all. And especially in like the middle chunk of this book, there were just so many parts that felt so slow to me. But it wasn't until like that final 30% of the book where things really started to pick up. You know, on the back of this book, it describes it as an epic story of murder, madness, and doomed love. But I feel like the stuff with like the murder and like the mystery elements of this don't even come in until like nearly the end of it. But that was definitely the part of the book that I found to be the most interesting. Some of the writing in this is really beautiful, like don't get me wrong. One of the quotes that I tabbed towards the end, when it says, does the madman know he is mad, or are the madmen those who insist on convincing him of his unreason in order to safeguard their own idea of reality? And there were a lot of really beautiful moments like this where like the writing is just very thought-provoking and it's very interesting. But I also think at the same time, like this book is just way too long. Like I don't think there's any reason for this story to be nearly 500 pages. And you know, like I was talking about earlier with all of these misogynistic comments constantly from the male characters, like that's something that doesn't go away and it just continues to happen throughout the book, and it's just very annoying. And if you haven't read this book but it's on your TBR, then please take my review with a grain of salt. All right, I have completed 9 books for this video, and I'm so excited and nervous to read the final book for this video. Let's cut to the clip. Kayla just sent me her recommendation video, and I've been really curious and really excited to see what Kayla is gonna recommend me, because I do feel like me and Kayla usually have very similar taste when it comes to books in most genres. I feel like Kayla is the kind of person that I can trust to give me a really weird book recommendation that I'm gonna end up loving. I'm kind of curious to see what she's gonna recommend me, because I feel like maybe she'll recommend me something that was like in her top 10 of last year that I haven't read yet. Like she recently just read Sky Full of Elephants, and that's one that I've added to my TBR since seeing her rave about it. Also, she loved that book called The Blue Book of Nebo or something like that. So I feel like maybe it could be one of those. I don't really know genre-wise either. Like, what could she recommend me? I'm hoping that it's gonna be a weird one. I don't know. Let's find out together.
Hello, Gabby. Thank you so much for inviting me to influence your TBR. The rare chance to make you read any book that I want. I would be remiss to not take the opportunity to make you read something you might not pick on your own, something that's been in TBR for 5+ years.
Oh,
I wonder, are you guessing what people are giving to you? Because that would be a really fun element of this. I hope that everyone else you asked is having your best interest at heart, giving you cutesy romance and punchy horror and good audiobooks. Because for me, you're going to be reading a 600-page metaphysical found footage horror novel. This is House of Leaves by Marcy. It's in my top 5 favorite books of all time. It might be number 1, but I would have to reread it. Maybe I'll reread it with you in February.
Oh my god.
It's a book that requires a lot of focus and time, so I hope you have that and you really take the opportunity to let the book consume you and just bask in what the book wants to be, which is a very frustrating labyrinth of a read. As the house is a labyrinth, the book reflects that, and you will find yourself aggravated by the reading experience. It's all worth it, I promise. You might love it or hate it, but I think everyone here will look forward to finding out your reaction to it and seeing your thoughts and hearing your rating. I hope you don't regret giving me this power. Bye!
I'm already regretting it. Are you kidding me? Of course Kayla's gonna make me read freaking House of Leaves. She knows that this has been on my TBR for like years and I've been pushing it off. My god, well, I guess the time has finally come for me to read House of Leaves. And in a video where I'm trying to take on reading 10 books, like this is gonna be absolute torture for me. But you know what? For Kayla, I will do it. I will read House of Leaves. Hopefully I can read House of Leaves and it won't actually kill me. Wow, that's so crazy. I don't know why I wasn't expecting that. I should have expected this because I know that how much Kayla loved House of Leaves. Like, why didn't I see this coming? Okay, hello. I wanted to update you because I have started reading House of Leaves. I am literally only 38 pages into this book and I have been reading for like at least 2.5 hours now. This book is just so incredibly dense and I think that that's the main reason why people like myself feel so intimidated by this book, because none of the way that this story is told is like done in a conventional way. Like everything about this book is told in a way that's like really weird, but the beginning pages especially are just so dense because there's just so much text on the page, and this story is told in a really weird way because there will be a lot of like footnotes at the bottom of the page that then go over into like the next page, and it's almost like the footnotes of this story are a second story within the story that you're reading. Something too that I wasn't expecting with this is that you do a lot of like flipping back and forth, because sometimes at the bottom they'll talk about how there's an appendix at the end. I ended up putting in these 2 tabs so I could flip back and forth easily, but basically there's an appendix in the back where you can flip and get a bunch of extra bonus stuff. Like for example, in the appendix there will be some moments like this where you can see some of the drawings and get some of the pictures so you can see what they're actually talking about. But because it's like that, you have to do a lot of like flipping back and forth to the back, which also takes some time. You know, I'm not gonna lie, at only 38 pages in, I am feeling a little bit confused at times and a little bit lost, but I'm also very intrigued. You know, this book starts with an introduction at the start from this character, Johnny, and the introduction itself was like so creepy and just really set the tone for this right away, which I really liked because I became immediately invested because of that introduction. And I also feel like some parts of this are written in a way where it like really immerses the reader in this feeling of like anxiety and discomfort, which I also really like about it. Like there was this one part so early on page 26 where this character's kind of talking about how he like fears like there's something like standing right behind him, or there's something watching him, like there's something stalking him, but he doesn't even know like how to explain how he feels this way. It's just that he knows, like he has this sense of dread that something is there. And the way that this book really like immerses the reader into that was so well done, because it says, to get a better idea, try this, focus on these words, whatever you do, don't let your eyes wander past the perimeter of this page. Now imagine just beyond your peripheral vision, maybe behind you, maybe to the side of you, maybe even in front of you, but right where you can't see it, something is quietly closing in on you. So quiet, in fact, you can only hear it as silence. That's where it is, right at this moment, but don't look. Keep your eyes here. Now take a deep breath. Only this time, as you start to exhale, try to imagine how fast it will happen, how hard it's gonna hit you. That is so creepy to me, the way that it really like talks to you directly as the reader of this book, and they're like, imagine something is like right behind you. Like, I don't like that. Like, that's creepy. And you know, all I really knew about this book before reading it is like the main general premise, where it kind of talks about how like they discover something terribly wrong. Their house is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. And that is basically like the general premise of this, is that there's these characters who discover that the house is changing, like the house that they're living in is changing. And so like their perception of reality and time seems to be changing with it. And these characters are starting to become even more disoriented. And I've heard so many people describe this book as like, you also feel like you're going crazy as the people in the book are also going crazy. And this main character, you know, Johnny was talking about how like he starts to feel like he's losing time and he's becoming more disoriented the more that he like falls into this project. And I was like, I also feel like I'm like losing time as I'm reading this or something, because I started reading this at 11:30 this morning and it's already like 2:30 in the afternoon. And I was like, I've only read 38 pages. I feel like hours are like slipping by as I'm reading this, which is also a very weird feeling. Another detail about this that I just absolutely love is that every time the word house is used, it's used in like this blue text that looks different from the rest of the text. But like even on this publishing page, when it says like Random House, and like anytime it says house, the text is blue, which I just think is so cool. I actually do have the full color edition, by the way. Like apparently there are a few different editions of this book, but the one that I have is the full color edition, and it is just so cool. Like I don't know why, I just love little details like that. But this book is a little bit tricky to read, you know, because sometimes like the footnotes will come in at the bottom of the page, but then the footnotes will spill into like the next 3 pages, and you have to be really paying close attention to like the story that's happening in the footnotes, but then also the story that's happening as like the main story. It does get a little bit confusing with like the going back and forth. I don't know if some people have said that this reading experience is better if you like skip the footnotes the first time that you read it and then you go back into the footnotes. But so far I am enjoying going back and forth. I actually am taking notes while I'm reading this book just so I don't get too confused. But I am really happy and really relieved, to be honest, that I'm enjoying this one so far, because I thought that I was gonna be like so lost. I thought that this was gonna be one of the most intimidating things that I've ever read, and in a lot of ways it is. It is a very intimidating book, but I am liking the vibes so far. I can see why so many people said that this is comparable to like We Used to Live Here, because I'm definitely getting those kinds of vibes where it's like you don't really know what the fuck is going on and like this house is just really weird, and I'm liking that a lot about this so far. I also decided that because this book is so long, I think I'm going to do a spin-off version of this vlog on my Patreon where I really get into my deep thoughts on this, because I don't want this main vlog that I'm doing to be so incredibly long. So I'm not going to check in with you as often in this vlog. If you would like to see the full vlog where I really do a deep dive on all of my thoughts on this book, I will have my Patreon linked down below. And that video will be available for like every single tier in my Patreon. I just really wanted to have a video and a place where I could like dump all of my thoughts. And I know that this video is already like way too long as it is, so it's not gonna be in this video. But anyway, I will check in with you when I get a little bit further in. Just gave me full body chills. This better be worth the effort. Oh my god, that's actually kind of sick. Oh, there's like one of these boxes that are backwards on like every single page. I don't know if you can see it. But like, okay, hi. I thought now would be a good time for me to update you because I've still been reading House of Leaves, and I am now on page 246. I have been absolutely flying through this last section because I just read a whole part where finally the text starts to get a lot easier to read. Like you were just flying through the pages through that section. But like, oh my gosh, I thought this book was going to like break my brain earlier today because some of those sections that I was having to read earlier today, like what the heck is going on? There are so many little bits where you have to like read this book in the mirror even to understand what it says because the text is like backwards. You also have to like flip this book upside down and like sideways and like all these different things to read what's going on the page. Like I think the formatting of this book is some of the most crazy shit that I've ever seen in my life. I still don't even think that I'm like halfway through the book. I still think I have a lot more to go, but I'm actually really liking this so far, like quite a bit. I also I found this playlist on Spotify that's called House of Leaves Vibes, and I've been listening to this as I've been reading it today, and like, oh my gosh, this playlist of music is like so deeply unsettling and like very disturbing, and it is only adding to the atmosphere of this book for me. Like some of the scenes that have to do with this house, I am just finding to be so creepy creepy. And I'm loving the style of horror that's in this book, because I kind of touched on this yesterday where I was just saying how the horror in this book is very subtle, and it's kind of written in this way where it's very like vague and you don't really know what the fuck is going on, but there's something about it that is just so deeply creepy to me. Like, this is exactly the kind of horror that I really like, because I don't want to be spoon-fed, you know, like I don't want to know everything, and I think sometimes that knowing less is even more scary, and this book is doing such a great job with that. And as far as like trying to understand like what is actually happening in this house with these characters, I just got to a part that was like explaining things just a little bit more, and it is just absolutely fascinating and so trippy to think about. And like, I don't think that I've ever read a book quite like this one. Like, the concept in it is just so unique and so fascinating. The formatting of the book is like part of the storytelling in a way that's like really interesting. Anyway, I'm going to update this vlog once I've finished the book, because I don't want this vlog to be too long. But like I did mention, you know, I'm doing an entire spin-off vlog on my Patreon where I've been updating it a lot more with all of my spoilery thoughts. But I'm glad that for the most part, this does feel right up my alley with what I like in horror, so that's fantastic. Finished it. Okay, so I finally finished reading House of Leaves on the third day. You know, immediately after finishing this book, I had to go back and watch Kayla's live show discussing this book, because my brain was just like all over the place, and I was like, what the fuck is even going on at the end of this book? I'm so torn right now on like what I want to rate this book, because I feel like my rating, I want to give this like 4.5 stars, because I don't know if it was like the perfect 5-star for me for a few different reasons, but like the experience of reading this book was a 5-star for me. This is definitely one of the weirdest reading experiences I've ever had. I'll never forget my experience reading this book, and I actually loved the way that you just feel so disoriented and so confused the further you get into the book. I just think it was so creative and like so unique, and so like the experience for me was a 5-star. But like, there were some elements of the book that I just didn't love. Like, for example, I was really into the Davidson record, like the part where you're actually like reading about the family that's like in the house. But however, I didn't really care for Johnny's footnotes throughout the story. You know, after watching Kayla's live show, I realized that the way that people say that you should read this book is with reading the Davidson record by itself and then going back through the story and reading Johnny's footnotes after that. Or how Erin was talking about in the live show, how she read it like chapter by chapter. So like, she read each chapter twice essentially, where like first you read all of the Davidson record parts and then you read Johnny's footnotes when going through for the second time. But I kind of just read it like as it came up on the page. Like, I wasn't going back and forth between those parts. And so I don't know, maybe I would have enjoyed the story even more if I had read it one of those other ways. Because for me, Johnny's footnotes, like sometimes they were interesting, but then sometimes I was like, oh my god, like this bitch just like doesn't shut up. Like, his parts just like go on and on and on, and all of his parts just seem so like nonsensical sometimes, where I'm like, what are you even talking about? Or he's just like talking about his sex life, or like things that like really don't matter or contribute anything to the overall story. So like, I was definitely frustrated with like some of Johnny's sections. And then I don't know why, I feel like especially towards the end, I do think the book kind of loses some of its steam just within those like last 30 pages. I was becoming a little bit like slightly less invested towards the end, and I wanted a little bit more of a powerful ending from this one. But I also think that this is the kind of book where like I can sit here and theorize and think about this book for hours, and I think that that's something that's really cool, because I personally love, you know, like ambiguous kind of endings like this where you can have a ton of different theories. I know I'm already going to be looking up, you know, like on Reddit and like all these websites, like all these different theories about what people think is going on at the end. I saw some of that happening in Kayla's live show, and I was like completely overwhelmed by like all of the things that could be happening in this. I just think that that's really cool. I also think like the horror in this book was something that was so eerie and weird and truly disturbing. And you know, it's odd because to call this book a horror book does feel like a bit of a stretch, because you know, this book is nearly 700 pages and there are such few moments of like true horror that's like actually happening on page. Like, it doesn't happen very often, but when it does, oh my god, like some of the horror was just so subtle and so effective. It's like more of that fear of the unknown, or like fear of what you know is going on, but it doesn't even happen on page. Like that shit really freaks me out. Like psychologically, I think this book really got to me. And even though this is a book that I am, you know, rating pretty high out of 4.5 stars, I think that this is something that I don't ever want to read this again. Like I know that this is probably the kind of book that you can pick up on even more things if you do go back in and reread it again. I personally, like, I love the experience that I had with this book. I think it was so fun, so entertaining, so weird, creative, unique. But do I ever want to experience it again? Absolutely not. I think this is the kind of book that requires a lot of patience in the reader. It takes a long time for things to get interesting, but then also like you never really get all of the answers that you might be wanting. And so I can see why this like wouldn't work for a lot of people. And I would actually say like if you were somebody that DNF'd this book in the first like 100 pages, I actually don't know if you would end up enjoying the rest of the book, because I do feel like the first 100 pages, like it definitely sets up the vibe for how the rest of the book does feel. So like if you're not satisfied with those first 100 pages, you're probably not going to enjoy the rest of it either. Wow, what a crazy journey that I just went on. Oh my god. I can't believe that I finally read House of Leaves. Let's go. I feel so accomplished right now, because like this is a book that I've been, you know, wanting to read for years, and I feel like I've just been so intimidated by this book and so scared of it for such a long time that like I really feel like I've overcome something here, you know, by finally reading this book. And I'm so glad that I actually enjoyed it. Like this was such a fun, I mean, it was frustrating, but it was also such a fun reading experience that I'll never forget. So like thank you actually to Kayla for finally pushing me to read this book. It had to happen. And with completing House of Leaves, I have finally finished working on this video project. This is definitely the most ambitious video project I've ever worked on, but I am really happy with doing this video project because I feel like I read some books that I would have probably never picked up on my own. I read some stuff that was outside of my comfort zone, and I also read some things that I've been, you know, wanting to read for years, but I've been pushing off forever. And here on the screen are the final results from this video. I'm really glad that I ended up finding 2 books that were 5 stars. I read my favorite book that I've read so far this year, which is still Don't Let the Forest In. And House of Leaves is a book that I rated super high, you know, that I'm never gonna forget my experience reading this book. And even though I did have a few misses in this video, I'm still glad that I gave them a shot. So that is a wrap on this video. Oh my gosh, if you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much. That means a lot to me. And I just wanted to remind you, if you want to see all of my deep dive thoughts on House of Leaves, including spoilers, I will have that vlog linked down below on my Patreon. That vlog is going to be available for like every single tier on my Patreon. But wow, thank you so much for watching. If you've read any of these books, please do let me know your thoughts on any of them. And thank you for watching. You know, like I've been on YouTube for 10 years now, which is just so crazy, and hopefully many more years to come. So thank you so much for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me. I will see you very soon with another video. Bye.